Welcome on in, everybody. If you guys have not seen this, this is our Beyond Denial lecture series where I start from March to September and we do 2 different lectures a month. I give a lecture about something about ancient Egypt, and then I invite a lovely guest onto my stream to tell about what they are, maybe not an expert, but what they are a professional in. We'll say professional. I think everyone can say that for sure. I can do that auto, no problem. All right. Hopefully that one's better. But we are going to talk about some really cool things about genealogy and funerary practices in the ancient and modern world. I'm first going to introduce Allison, and I'm just going to reiterate, if you are over on Twitch, please use the lecture question channel point if you want us to answer a question. We're not doing a PowerPoint. It is going to be very much free-flowing discussions. We have a couple questions that we've sent each other about what we want to talk about, but it is very much just kind of here's what you're going at. So let me read a little bit about our lovely guest so that everyone can learn a little bit about her. So everyone, please let us welcome Allison Stevenson, aka CrazyCemeteryLady. She is a cemetery preservationist, genealogist, and storyteller based in upstate New York. And through her work with Grave Geeks and CrazyCemeteryLady, she connects headstones to historical records, helping uncover the family stories preserved in cemeteries. Y'all should check out her YouTube and her TikTok for cemetery cleaning videos, as well as really cool connecting, again, those cemeteries and the people buried there with the stories that we learn in genealogy. So welcome on in.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
I am so happy to be here because, as I said right before we got started, I worked as a genealogist for 2 years. And so we were going to have lots of fun things because, again, like, genealogy is that other circle that's like, I'm barely in the Venn diagram that I did for a couple years. And I love learning about my own personal family history. So genealogy is one of those things that I have, admired. And it is a really, really interesting way to use history, sort of, and like very, very hyper focus on something very minute. And I think it's really interesting because a lot of times history is the very, very big picture, and it is the famous people, and it is all of that, and genealogy is kind of the opposite. Although, yes, there are people who love those royal genealogies, as I will admit I do. But I love that genealogy is allowing us to sort of hone in on anyone, really. Anyone you want. So I want to start off with just some very basic questions, just so we can get to know you, Allison, and get to know your work. How did you get into genealogy, and how did you get into cleaning headstones? And is that the same path or very different paths?
Very different paths.
Okay.
So I started off in genealogy when my grandmother handed me this from 1934. Her great uncle did a quick line genealogy showing that we had a Revolutionary War soldier.
Ah, okay.
And I was 9 years old. Okay? So this was, what? Oh, that's so cool. And I'm old enough that there wasn't Ancestry. Mm-hmm. So we went off to the library.
We love libraries here. Absolutely.
Yeah. And started going through and researching and finding stuff. And I looked at my grandma. I said, I want to join the Daughters of the American Revolution because that's so cool. I could be a part of it. And I had enough by the time I was 16, and I contacted one of the chapters. And, like, I don't know if they thought I was, like, punking them.
That is pretty young, yeah.
I mean, 16, I sounded like I was about 5. Until I was about 35, people would call and say, is your mommy or daddy there?
Yeah. Cats.
No, husband. It's really loud. So they just like kind of brushed me off. So I kept on doing genealogy and stuff, and I did eventually prove my own line and get into it. But the headstone cleaning stuff didn't come until 2020, like during COVID.
Oh, okay.
Because I have autoimmune and I couldn't be around people,
Mm.
and people couldn't be around me.
Yeah.
And I ended up seeing somebody clean. I think it was oh gosh. Anyways,
Yeah.
I saw her. I totally lost her name. Um,
But there
Manic
are a lot
Pixie
of
Mom.
people. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep. So she did it, and I'm like, that's something I can do.
Hmm.
It's like not around people. It's not around, I can't get sick.
Yeah.
And I drove by one every day. So I got permission. I did so much research, and that's part of the problem is everything was scattered. You couldn't get
Yeah.
a solid answer out of anybody.
No.
And learned how to do it.
That is amazing. And I think my genealogy story is very weirdly similar. I don't know if I was 9, but I was definitely really young. Um, well, actually, yeah, it was very close. I think I started helping my parents do it around 13, maybe. And we didn't even like Ancestry, yes, like wasn't total like it was a thing at the time, but it wasn't hugely a thing. So we used one called Genie.com to kind of map out our family. And one of the weird things with Genie.com is that if you added a person on your family tree, your email got attached to that person. And so one of the big things that happened when I was about like 13 or 14 was I got an email from a stranger in Michigan who was our distant relative, that had been cut off from the family in New Jersey with the boiler works. And I was like, Mom, I have this weird email. What is this? And it was really funny in that sense that I got very, very much attached and really liked genealogy. And it was very much in the same time period that I went to, so my paternal grandparents are born and raised in Hungary, and we went to Hungary when I was 13 with my grandparents and my dad. And I distinctly remember borrowing one of our cousins' computers and going on Genie and looking, because we found the family cemetery plot in Keste. And I love that it was something that just like brought a like as a young age got me very interested in history in a completely different way. And I've been obsessed with it pretty much ever since, but mainly with my own family. So as most of I think y'all may have concluded in my followers, I worked for the DAR for 2 years, almost 2 years.
I'm waiting for
As
Tasha to flip out. She was a genie.
I was a
She was a
genie.
genie.
So I approved all of these applications that came in, and I love that they dismiss you at 16, because I'm sure maybe they didn't have the rule, but usually it's like you can't do it until you're 18. And
Yeah.
I met so many people. So the DAR is the Daughters of the American Revolution. It is a group, essentially a well, I was going to say fraternal organization. It's not a fraternal organization. It is a familial organization that ties women back to a direct line to somebody who was a patriot in the Revolutionary War. And patriot has a very wide definition nowadays, which I always love telling people about, because it does not necessarily mean you have to fight in the war. It means you have to support the war in a lot of different efforts, and there are a very wide amount. And so I was one of those people that the applications would come in and I would approve them based on all of the documentation that they get in. So it's a weird type of like very satisfying and stuff. Very satisfying, like I can approve this because you gave me all this documentation. And then it also allowed me to become very curious. If something didn't really line up, dates or they missing a document, I could go in and search on all of these amazing databases that have really, really cool documents from either very, very early American history or up to fairly recent. And so it was not it was never like it was never like my perfect job ever, because I knew nothing about the Revolutionary War before. Let's just say that flat out was one of my least favorite time periods of history. I do have a new appreciation because I learned about really, really cool Native American patriots, female patriots, African American patriots, and a lot of really cool histories that don't get talked about at all. And it was just really, I did like it. It took me a while. There was a little bit of the quota that I hated, but Everything
Yeah.
else was very cool.
And you missed approving my application by like 2 years.
Oh, really?
Because I think
Oh my
mine,
God.
I think mine went through in 2019.
Oh, wow. That is close.
Mm-hmm.
I later moved to supplementals, which is for people who are already members of the DAR, and that waiting list is insane.
I know I got 5 to submit.
And the worst part is that right after I left, they decided to offer double overtime for people doing supplementals, and I was like, "What? What? Why? Why did they offer that when I was there? I would have stayed at least for a little bit longer." But yes, it was its own very interesting thing, and as somebody who has literally no line that could get approved by the DAR except for a adoption, which would be too hard to prove. It's kind of very interesting to look at it from the outside and see the people that really love genealogy and like history and want to sort of connect with that as well.
I have 12 lines.
Woo! You guys, you've been here longer than I have.
All in New York.
All
That's
in
why
New
I
York.
was like, oh, why do you hate it? Why do you hate being in New York so much? And I'm like, because my family's been here since 1710.
That's long. And I will say, at least you're in New York, where their records are way better than some of the other states. But yeah, my one potential line is way too complicated to prove, and I wouldn't be able to probably prove that the person was a patriot. But one of my big genealogy investigations I've had to do is that my maternal grandfather was adopted, and we were able in 2020 to get his adoption records unsealed, because through DNA we figured out that he wasn't the child of a single 16-year-old Catholic schoolgirl, but was the son of a 30-year-old woman who was orphaned, living in Washington, D.C., and 2 years after he was born and she gave him up, she got married to his biological father and had 2 more kids. Oh, I can tell you all the crazy details there. And then lived in the same neighborhood as to where he got adopted. And that my grandfather's, one of his best friends throughout his entire life, who he was an altar server with at this church, is his actual biological cousin. And he never knew. And that was sort of one of these really big investigations I had to do. And it was always so funny because I got into genealogy because my paternal side, my great grandfather and my grandfather wrote memoirs, and I've read them several times and loved reading them. But all of the crazy stuff is on my mom's side, and I lost my train of thought. I was gonna say something about that, and now I cannot remember. Yes, I apologize for the ads. I know that the ads do come up every 3 minutes, but it only comes up every hour, so it'll come up. The other ad will come up in about an hour. Oh my god, I totally lost my one line. So my one potential line is that my grandfather's biological, I think it's his father, direct descendant down from Commodore Barry, the first conscripted naval officer of the United States, but he never had any children. So we are direct line to hit one, or I'm not even sure which one of his nephews who he adopted straight from Ireland. So one, I'd have to prove the adoption, which I cannot do except with DNA, but also DNA, you can use that as a link, but it is way too complicated and it would never work. I already know it would never work. There's no point in me trying. And I'd have to also prove that 1 or 2 of the nephews did anything in the war, which I did a little investigation. I couldn't even figure out which one we're related to, but that is supposedly from essentially one of the daughters of one of my, what would she be? I don't even know. Great nieces or something. So one of my 2 grandfather's biological siblings had a daughter, and she was the one. Yeah. So oh, wow. That's really weird because she's very close in age to me, which is a little odd. But yeah, so my great aunt, she was the one who did all a lot of this research. She's a big person in genealogy, and we were kind of together, the people who figured it out all together. And so I'm like, it would be way too complicated. Yeah.
I had to think. You're like grandfather, sisters. I was like,
my grandfather's sister. So my great aunt.
yep.
But yeah, so this is just all the little tidbits of genealogy that I loved sharing when I worked there, and was literally at the moment, almost then, I was actively figuring some of this stuff out at that same time. But yeah, I liked my time at the DAR just a little bit. I wish they paid me more, but that's okay.
I wish they'd pay me anything.
I know. I've like contemplated, I'm like, I am now an expert enough on these documents that I'm like, I should get the old DAR ladies to pay me to do their documents so that
Tasha and I are the ones that submit it to you.
Okay. Yeah.
We're the registrars.
You're the registrars? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, I need to like somehow slither my way in, because now I know how to make an application look pretty so that none of the genies gets mad, and I'm like, I could use this somehow.
You could be a consultation, so we can just slide the applications to you, and then you could be like, no, they're not going to like this. Take that out.
Oh my God. I know. If I had all the time in the world, I know that I could make bank from some old ladies.
Oh God, yes. Especially DAR ladies.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But yeah, so that's so interesting. The cemetery cleaning came so much later. And then when did you start posting on TikTok then? After 2020?
2021.
Okay. So you took a little time, figured out how to clean, and then...
Yeah, well, again, it was a lot of research because there was nothing available. Like, you just had a couple people that says, just do as I do.
Yeah.
And I don't do well with that. Like, well, do as you do, why? Why?
Yeah. Me neither.
So I needed to learn more.
Yes. And question from Dash that's a little off topic, but I think relevant. Do you believe in the paranormal since you clean headstones?
I don't think cemeteries are haunted.
Okay.
Because I'm not a big paranormal person, but we are energy, and when we die, the energy has to go somewhere. So I feel like if you want to go somewhere that's haunted, go to a hospital. Like, go to where people die. That's where you're going to find these, whatevers. So, I mean, I've felt nothing but peace walking into a cemetery. I've known some people that had some issues, Tasha's kiddo being one, but then there was a little kid that actually died right next to the cemetery in a very horrific manner. So, like, okay, then I could understand that. But for, like, just normal, let's go out, get our paranormal stuff, and let's go sit in the cemetery. Why?
Yeah. No.
Nobody's there. I mean, if I was dead and I had to hang out somewhere, ain't gonna be at the cemetery. Well, maybe for me, but most other people, no.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely believe in the paranormal, and so I'm one of those people that, like, I do believe in ghosts. I don't want ghosts. I don't want them near me. So it's like I will avoid anything that could possibly. So, like, cemeteries are usually a place that I don't hang out very much. But in a very funny, like, happenstance, I wonder when that was. Probably 2021 or 2022. It was when I was working at the DAR. I saw on Facebook that a group in Maryland was doing a cemetery cleaning, like, seminar, like a 2-day seminar. And I was like, that sounds fun. That sounds interesting. I don't know if I would go out and clean cemeteries, but those videos did become, like, super popular, and I was seeing them on other pages. And so I was like, I'll go. And was a very, very interesting seminar. And one, it did give me a little bit more of, like, cemeteries are cool places. Like, you can go to cemeteries. Because the second day we met up at a cemetery that's like a garden that's taken care of by the community. And it's beautiful. Oh my gosh. It's, like, so beautiful. It's very small. It's a very historic old cemetery, but they've just made it absolutely beautiful. And I was like, I would sit here. Like, this does not, like, I sort of came to peace with, like, okay, this is not like a haunted, scary place. This is a beautiful place. The other fun thing is I firsthand was realizing the potential tension between cemetery cleaning people, because this guy pretty much full ranted at us about how to clean and how not to clean tombstones.
I know who it is. I know who it is.
I had a feeling. I was like, you have to probably know, because this guy obviously was offering it, and he is like semi a company that kind of does it, and I was like, it was so aggressive. I was like, I don't know anything. It's like it was sort of like he felt like he was lecturing us for doing something bad, even though he was just telling us, don't use all these super harsh chemicals and don't do all these stuff. And I'm like, this makes sense to me. I get it. Right. But it was very like, it was like aggressive, very aggressive.
See, she knows who it is too.
I love this, because this is just, it was so random for me to do
and
this.
And they didn't make eye contact with you at all, right?
No.
Yep, that's who it is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was who it is. And it was very informative, but it gave me so much more insight into how this field, which like it is kind of an emerging field, it is a practice that a lot of people are going out and doing, how there's already a lot of tension that I'm like, I feel like there's unresolved tension. I feel like people are getting mad about this already. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was very, very interesting, intriguing. But that is my only little insight into it. Because when we went to the cemetery the other day, I thought maybe we would clean, but it was more about, like documentation and he had sort of a chart that we sort of filled out of like, okay, what's it looking like now? Sketch it, and very simple. I was kind of hoping we would clean one, just because I knew that I probably was not going to have time to do that on my own, and I thought it would be very helpful and cool to be able to do it once by myself. But that's interesting. You're not allowed to clean headstones unless it's the
a lot of European countries don't allow that, but because they have, like in the UK, there's certain lichen that are protected. So like you're not supposed to take off this moss or this certain lichen. So they're like, no, you can't clean it. But interesting. The lichen and the stuff actually do damage.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So.
Because obviously not every headstone is made out of the same stone, and some stone is much more porous than another. And weaker, and I'm assuming any lichen and any will bring water into potential cracks and will crack the whole thing. And, so it's definitely in the middle of like, yes, we should get off the lichen. No, we shouldn't bleach them, which I know is how a lot of them, it's like, I've seen like the white marble ones should not be that white.
Water space, you would be surprised. Can I tell a quick little? So
go for it.
Grave Geeks is when I said how it was really difficult to find things, to learn things. My friend Tasha, who's in there, who I found that also cleans headstones, like 40 minutes or 30. Back then it was like 40 minutes, but not that far away from me. And so we were chatting and we're like, geez, wouldn't it be... Oh, Cemetery Mom's here too. See, we follow each other.
I'm so glad y'all are here.
Yeah, so we're like, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could just find people all over the U.S. that like to, clean up and do stuff in cemeteries, and like we can just put together just a whole list of what you should and shouldn't do. And we did.
I love this. This is great.
So gravegeeks.org actually has a list of supplies. There's how-to videos. It's a nonprofit, so it just hit a year. We've been a nonprofit for a year. So the goal is to make all the information centralized so that you can just go to one place. Now, are we all experts? No. But the basics are there. And if you want to get into like the weeds, well, then you're looking at finding, masons and things like that. But for basic, everyday mom, pop, grandma's cleaning up grandpa's headstone, all the information's there.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, happy 1 year for Great.
And now we are at 36 states and over 75 volunteers.
Amazing. That is so great.
In a year.
That is so amazing. I commend you guys for this work, because there are, like, I understand sort of what like Dash was saying, that like in Sweden you can only do it when your family is there, but like there are so many gravestones where they don't have any more family, that they are either so old, or there are people that unfortunately are just like kind of last of their families that live locally. And so it's really important to be able to sort of have like help in whatever way you can. And I talk about this unfortunately a lot because I get the people who think that like archaeology is grave robbing. And I sort of, one of my first baseline things I say is that cemetery is protected. More than likely, there is some sort of law that if somebody goes and starts digging, they can get arrested for that. And it is also something that there, yes, are like those local cemeteries that are like on private property that used to be sort of where like a big house was or something. But the other thing is like cemeteries, they are all enclosed. They sometimes have somebody that mines it, that goes there and checks on things. And like archaeology is not like that because graves can be anywhere and they are not in those areas of protection. But at the same time, even though those graveyards are protected in their own way, they will deteriorate. Currently where I live, we have a historic cemetery that keeps flooding. And with the archaeology museum that I work at and the archaeologist, there is a whole process that is going towards trying to remit all of the water that they are having. And it might include having to bring up graves. The process is just sort of starting, but like this is part of that process, is that if we want to be respectful of the dead and we want to try to do whatever we can to help that in some way. Just give me, yeah, okay, I think we're still good. So one of the things that I feel like people probably, because there are so many people that don't know their personal genealogies, that don't know. And when I say genealogy in this sense, we're going to talk about not like ancestry, like not what countries you're coming from or your family comes from, just like simply your ancestors, in that sense. Why do you think people should care about genealogy?
It's one of those things where if you don't know the path that your ancestors took, you don't have a good idea of why they made the decisions that they did. So, for example, I just did this story this week. I haven't even completed the story. So it was a husband and wife that came from Scotland and, bit the bullet. Like they were married. They had 4 kids in tow. They came to the U.S. He became a factory worker. And after a couple years, they moved to Watertown, where I'm at. And they were here for 6 months, and there was an accident. A pipe burst. He got completely burned, and like 8 days later, he died.
Oh.
Which sounds horrible. But the mom had 5 children, and only one, the youngest, was the only one born in the U.S. And like 4 years afterwards, she remarried to, he wasn't a doctor. He was like doctor adjacent, back in, like the late 1800s, you didn't really have to have what you have now. And because of him, and her youngest that was born in the U.S. was 11 when they got married, he really helped shape him. He finished school. He went on for a college degree. He became an engineer.
Wow.
That worked, and then his 2 sons became engineers. And I can't remember if it was him or one of the sons, worked on the Gemini project.
Wow.
They worked on spacecraft, and with that work and refinement, they're one of the reasons why we have airbags.
Wow.
So if you don't
really cool.
know where you're coming from, you don't know the path. So if you didn't search up and find out, like, oh yeah, grandma and grandpa. Well, believe it or not, that wasn't actually your grandpa. Your grandpa died long ago in an accident after, braving all of this stuff coming on a ship from Scotland. So it really gives you perspective when you can see past family members and what they did and what they went through. I mean, I had a whatever great uncle during the Revolutionary War get kidnapped. He was like
Whoa.
7 and brought to Canada by the Brant and his band of,
Wow.
is it, I don't know what
It's
PC term to call.
yeah.
Yeah. So they were, and he was there for 2 years.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's so hard to, because unfortunately there is a lot of our, probably at least 2 generations behind me, didn't really want to talk about history, unfortunately. And I was very lucky that, especially my grandparents that went through World War I and World War II, they did want to talk about it. Now, did they write the best memoirs ever that gives us me all of the information and all of their emotions that I wanted to know about what happened to them? No, of course they did not. But they gave me enough that I really saw a lot of perspectives. Because, as you guys might know, Hungary was taken over by the Germans. And so my grandfather fought technically on the wrong side. Or great-grandfather, excuse me. He fought on the wrong side, and he was a POW in France. But he fought for Hungary. That is all he ever cared about, was Hungary. And the Germans tore through Hungary very badly. And one of the things I remember when I was younger, going to my grandparents' house in Florida, because I was the only granddaughter who would go on the trip, I would get my room to myself, and the boys would have to go and share. And the room that I stayed in was their office, and in the closet there was tons of photo albums. And I would sit there just all day, just like going through photo albums. And I found a book that had all of these letters in it. And it was my grandfather, who was born in Hungary, was a very young child when his father was a POW, traveled around with all of these bands of Hungarian women who created Hungarian dolls to sell to American soldiers to make money to try to get their husbands out. It's this amazing little story of them following wherever their husbands and brothers were. And when he gets to the United States, he's the only one that speaks English between him and his parents. He ends up joining the Air Force, and he gets to go full ride to Stanford on the GI Bill. And my grandfather worked for NASA and was able to do really cool things. He wasn't the huge big engineer. He was more an admin, but he was very, very proud of it till the day he died. And in this book, I found all these letters of him writing to different senators and different politicians about trying to tell them what was going on in Hungary. Because in the Cold War, Hungary was still really, really bad, was very much suffering. And he's just writing letter after letter after letter, trying to get American people to see what was going on. And that just, I mean, seeing that dedication in those documents, which sometimes you don't get, but there are plenty of times that you get these really good primary documents, primary sources that are not just the censuses and give you kind of the basic information. People have preserved letters and diaries and absolutely like amazing documents. And so I always laugh at myself that like I am over half Irish when you look at the ancestry chart from my mom's side. I never identify as an Irish American because it is so far back in my genealogy that it's just like nobody passed anything on. But it is something that I'm very proud to say that I identify as Hungarian American, only second generation or third generation. And it's just so, it's so fascinating. And I think, again, that it's that minuscule history that is really, really cool.
But also you can kind of connect it to yourself.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
You just said, he was tenacious. He was constantly sending letters, trying to raise awareness and being persistent. And that's something that you have qualities of.
Thank you.
Not everybody could. I'm not joking. When people that in the back to the DAR, but when people hear like, oh yeah, the DAR genies, it's like,
yeah,
don't make the genie mad. We're sorry. You know, like, there's almost like a slight, you know,
Oh my
tinge
God.
of fear.
I love
So
that. That's crazy. I would have never
it's,
thought that.
oh God, yes. Oh God, yes. It's like, oh God, please, genie, just be nice to me. But, you know, you are putting yourself out there. You're doing these. You're
Mm-hmm.
making sure that, you know, information is passed along. So
Mm-hmm.
even though, you know, you didn't quite connect on, you know, it was several generations and,
Yeah.
you know, you had your grandpa, but it was one more up, that was still passed down.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's just one of those things that it's like learning about your family. It does. It teaches you very much about yourself. It makes so much sense, like thinking about like how my grandparents acted, how my grandparents were always, um, God bless them. You know, like everybody jokes that, oh, your grandma keeps all the expired things in their cabinets and stuff like
Yeah.
that. My grandparents did that because they were in a war. Like it all connects. I'm like, I know why they did this. I know why they would do these little things, and it helps you learn a little bit more about their personalities. And I think, especially as a kid, you don't get to see all of that. And unfortunately, some people's grandparents they die when you are quite young, and so it's hard to kind of look back on that. But getting to see these primary documents is something that is really cool. That you can I actually know somebody, Tasha. One of my lovely friends who I was hoping might be here tonight in the chat. He is a historian for what's the other company? It's not 23andMe. It's not Ancestry. It's
Family Tree?
Family Tree. Yeah. It's My Heritage. It's the Mormons.
My Heritage, yeah. There's a couple of them.
And he speaks Hungarian, and so he has given me a lot of help when I have way too many documents in Hungarian. So hit me up, Tasha. We'll figure it out. I had a great question from JD. How do you get through a brick wall in your tree? Because I've had that happen too, very much so. What are your recommendations?
It depends. So it honestly depends. Sometimes you don't. I mean, sometimes the records just don't exist. I had a brick wall. So, my grandmother was adopted, but not officially.
Ooh, I'm so sorry.
So, like, I was going round and around. I called up New York State. Now, this is before the whole you can get your birth certificate after 18, which was awesome. But I'm on the phone after like an hour and a half on hold with New York State. Like, okay, I'm trying to find my great grandmother's original birth certificate. Well, she'll have to request it.
Huh.
She's dead.
She's dead. Yep.
Well, then her parents could request it. Sweet baby child. She was born in 1904. Her parents are not alive.
No.
They're not, you know, like even her daughter's gone. Like they're dead. I literally said to her, I said, ma'am, they're dead. All of them. Anybody that was at that adoption, they're all dead. All of them.
This is what we had to do with my grandfather, because my grandfather was dead when we requested the records as well.
It's like, well, I don't know. You can join one of the adoption websites. Yeah. I'm like, they're all dead.
They're all dead.
So I was like, you know, that's not going to happen. I'm done. You know, I'll just never know. So she'll just be, you know, who she is. And then, like, 15 years later, I get an Ancestry hint. And it was like, oh, there's a new Social Security thing. And I'm like, oh, because you can get a couple of them. It's not just one. Sometimes there's like 3 or 4 records. So I'm like, okay, cool. So, you know, I go and click on it. And I always never accept a hint. Never blindly accept a hint.
No, you
because
gotta look at
it might not be right.
Yeah.
So I, look at it. I'm like, okay. So I open it up. It was her original Social Security application. Now, mind you, they didn't start requiring this until like the 30s, 40s.
Yeah, yeah.
So she was already an adult. It wasn't done as a child. So she listed her birth parents.
Wow.
I was like, I'm sorry, what?
So that meant she knew her birth parents' names at least?
She did.
Wow.
And so
that's crazy.
Her mother had already been in the paper because she had an older sister. Her mother was a later teen that was unwed.
Unwed.
And I think it was 1897 or 8, unwed, and had a baby with the butcher's apprentice. And they were arresting the butcher's apprentice because it was, he didn't, step up and step forward. And there was a problem with the warrant, and he got away. Because they had to go back and get one. So she kept that kid, and then she got married. Oh no, she didn't keep that kid.
Yeah,
she got married. And then had another daughter, and then she was probably about 4 months pregnant with my great-grandmother when there was an announcement in the paper that from her husband saying that, she left. And this is not uncommon. She left. He is no longer responsible for any charges incurred by her. It literally says she left his bed and board.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she found an older couple. I never found the connection on how she even knew them.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that was a brick wall that I never thought I'd figure it out, but it just one day
it just opened up.
And every day they're digitizing more and more records. So don't ever give up hope.
Yeah. When it comes to like really far back stuff, like that's when it's going to get difficult, but like hopefully like things are constantly getting scanned, and a lot of things are scanned, they're just not searchable. So sometimes if you can like figure out what document maybe you got to look through, maybe I got to look through 1 million pages and maybe you'll be able to find it there. One of my brick walls is that my last name is very unique, and which is why I don't say it. But there is a whole other group of we're going to say MelissainDeNiles. There's a whole other group of the MelissainDeNiles out on the West Coast, and it makes no sense. Like, and it's spelled exactly like ours, because our name can be spelled a bajillion different ways. But there's a whole other group out west, and they have been here way longer than, and this is my Hungarian side of my family. They have been here way longer than my grandparents have. And my dad has contacted them before, trying to sort of figure out how it is, and we can't figure it out. Like, we genuinely just like cannot figure it out, how this group came here, how they fit into our line, because they have to be related to us because our name is so, so unique. And like the closest thing as I have found is when I've searched my last name in like newspapers.com, which is like one of my favorite websites in the world. And I find this really, really old, well, unfortunately, a lot of the stuff I find is German newspapers, German American newspapers that are not only in German, which I do not speak, and in the fancy German font, which makes it even more impossible to read. And so there are instances of our names popping up really early. And one of the first ones that's in English is a guy named Janos, which is John in Hungarian, freezing to death in a barn, I believe in upstate New York somewhere. And I'm like, great. Yeah. Who's this guy? And I was like, I think about this guy all the time because I'm like, what if he is the link? What if he is somehow related to us and he was one of the people that came over and then some of his relatives went west and he just stayed there and died. He froze to death in a barn. And it's just like so hard to be like, well, I'm just never going to figure out how we have this whole other group, because there is, ironically, another Melissa last name. There's one of me that exists out there in the world, and it's very weird because there's just two of us out there.
Number one, there is another free website you're going to want to know. It's called Fulton Postcards. There are old Fulton postcards, Fulton History.
Fulton History. I remember this. We used this in the DAR. Yep. I remember this website.
Yep. Yeah. And actually, our group was offered if we wanted to take it over. Ooh. But this man literally has the servers, in his house. And I'm like, I don't even have fiber cable. Obviously, look at some of the, I don't have great internet here. But, so I have a similar story adjacent. So my dad was adopted. And I know how you said that, your grandpa had literally his cousin was his bestest bud.
Best friend. Yeah.
Well, the family that adopted my father has a very Italian name. And it's not a common Italian name. Like, you're not, you search it, I'm probably going to be related.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't a closed adoption. And when she had 3 kids already, 3 boys, and her husband had gone off in World War II to be working undercover because he was German, spoke fluent German.
Oh.
So, he was CIA sort of adjacent. And he decided, he left a wife and 2 boys at the time, and decided when he was done, he didn't want to go back to that life. He wanted to start over.
Second family. There's so many. It's crazy
He,
how it's
he
so common.
and she couldn't find him, so she couldn't find him to get divorced because
Which
he
also,
just went poof.
poof.
Yeah, so you have to
Yeah.
wait 7 years. So she had a relationship with a guy, got pregnant, and then now she is working as, now mind you, her name was Alice.
Mm.
My name's Allison.
Yeah.
She was working as a nursing assistant.
Mm.
I'm a nurse. And she has 3 boys, and then she got pregnant again.
Mm.
And she's like, I can't even take care of the 3 because sometimes they were in foster care for a bit while she was trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
So she couldn't do it. So she, through a Protestant church, connected with my grandparents and my grandfather. Now, when I say they're Italian,
Yeah.
I mean connected Italian,
Yes.
like cement shoes connected. Okay.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll give you 10 grand. In 1950.
Oh my
I'll
God.
give you 10 grand. And she goes, I'm not selling you my kid. I want him to have a better life. But he was ready to, like, here's 10 grand. That would buy you a house.
Yeah, absolutely it would in 1950.
But
Oh my God.
that would buy you a house. So, anyways, fast forward. So she knew who adopted him. And he got engaged to my mother. And there was an announcement, and she worked so my grandmother was the receptionist for the executive of a big museum in Utica, Munson Williams Proctor Institute. And my mom was like an assistant, she was just out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
So it said where they worked. And then my dad would pick my mom up in this, not the mechanic, the janitor guy, maintenance guy, would be like, hey, have a cup of coffee. And they'd chat while he waited for my mom. Fast forward, we found out who his birth family was when I was 12.
Yeah.
That was his biological mother's good friend.
Wow.
And one of the boys that would work in the summertime at the museum was his brother. Like my dad's brother. And it was his godfather. So, like, she knew. Crazy. And she said, go find out about my kid. Because she never had contact.
Yeah.
Yep.
It does bring up, and I will say, it's like, I don't say that I like to gossip, but hey man, when people have been dead for a long time, I like the drama. I like the drama.
I have found so much drama.
On top of my whole family, with like my grandfather being adopted, the other very complicated thing, which we did know about way before this, was that my grandfather's adoptive father had an affair with a woman that he worked with, who was also my grandfather's piano tutor, and had a daughter with her. So he never had any biological children with his wife, but with this other woman. And they lived very close. I think they lived like in Baltimore and stuff. And when I was a baby, my grandfather found out about it because I think the daughter contacted him somehow. And so there's this whole story, which annoys me so much that I don't know, unfortunately, where apparently he drove up to New Jersey he dropped my grandma off, and he said, I'm going to be gone for the rest of the day. I'll be back. And he apparently drove up to wherever this woman was and confronted her and came back and then never talked about it ever again. But I also met the adulteress, the child, when she came and visited us once, because she lived in like France like her whole life, and she brought me and my brother's presents like when I was like a baby. And the weirdest thing about it is that on my mom's side, my maiden name is also very unique, and she uses it like, I've found her social media. She's still alive. She uses that last name as her last name, at least I think, or at least uses it on her social media. And it's so strange to me. And when the most recent census just came out, so they just, what was that, 1940 they just released, I think. 50. They released the 1950 census. So as soon as the 50 census got released, I texted my mom and I was like, hey, we should go see where she is. And we found the adulteress and the daughter, and there's a man living with them. And my mom looks at this guy's name and she goes, I think that's Matt. And I'm like, but that's not his name. And I'm like, my mom's like, I think that's Matt. That's his dad's name. His dad's name like was Robert or something. And she's like, that's it. That's his dad's name. I think he lied on the census. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. And so I haven't, because it's hard, obviously it's only 1950. So some records are open, some records are not. I probably, maybe in like 5 years or something, I want to do a deep dive and see if that person is a real person. Mm-hmm. And if I can't find anything, I think it's my great grandfather, like lying. And that means he's on the census twice. Because he's obviously in DC with his wife and his adoptive son. But I'm just like, oh my God, the drama just like comes out. And
don't listen to anybody that says, you know, I cringe because I know for a fact, you know, there's some people on here that'll be like, oh, well, when they came across and came to the US, they didn't change their names. Whoa.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Absolutely not. Because my great-grandfather, there was several people that paid him to use the last name to say that they were a cousin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paid.
Yeah. The trope is that like Ellis Island changed people's names, and it is something that is still spread around, absolutely. But what we sort of have realized over time, what it is that for a long time you could just go under the radar with different names, because in this early 1900s and even before that, you're on a very select amount of vital documents. You do not have, there is no such thing as an ID. You don't have to carry these IDs. Obviously, driver's license does not come out until cars start being more accessible. And so more than likely what it is that, and also we know also that people at Ellis Island, they went off of the ship manifest. So there's kind of two options to this. Either you lied on the ship manifest, which honestly, I'm probably sure you could, because again, you don't have to show an ID. Like when you get there, you just say, this is how you spell my name.
To buy your ticket.
Yeah. I'm like, this is how you spell my name. This is how you spell my kids' names. Like you could lie fully. You could completely make up a new name, or over time, you change the spelling of your name. I've always wondered, because my last name is so unique, but I know that it was spelled with a U instead of an I. And so I've always wondered, based on documentation, like when that change was. And I think it's like pre-World War II. Honestly, because most of the documents
back and forth. I've seen that too, where like and if they're not super, I mean, this isn't a dig at anybody, but not everybody was literate.
No. Very good point.
Like, how do you spell your name? I don't know. I write an X.
Yes.
And so they would be like, oh, well, how about, you know, does it like Tasha, Jordan, Yurden? It depends on the inflection in your voice.
Because honestly, I think that's a better option, is that the person who's writing out the ship manifest, if someone's not literate, you say, my name is Mr. Jordan, but it sounds like Yurden. They're going to write down what it is, not the person at Ellis Island, because they're going off of that ship manifest. And so like, it's entirely possible that yes, some people, I know I've seen census people make mistakes in the census. One of my favorite ones was I found two families that had the same mother and father's name, same last name, and a shit ton of kids. And essentially the person that I was critiquing their paper had gotten these families mixed up, because the timing was exactly the same. It was the same families, and there was one kid that had, because again, everyone's John, everyone's Mary. It's all the simple names. There's no unique, no different names. And the only thing that was really distinctive is I had to map out over maybe 4 censuses all of these kids and their ages. And there was one that one of the families had twins. And on one census, only one twin appeared. And I was like, oh no. I was like, oh gosh, no, one of the other twins died. I go to the next census, the twin's alive again. I'm like, wait, what the heck happened? And when you looked really closely, the census maker counted the twins as one person.
Oh, there you go.
Because the twins had like a first name and a middle name, and on one they were on with their first name, and the one they were on the middle name, and then this other one they said two names because obviously the lady's just sitting there and she goes, "Yeah, these are my kids." Da 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 da. And she probably said the twins' name at the same breath.
Yeah.
And he just wrote them down.
Mary Jane are 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they heard
exactly.
Mary Jane is 12.
Mary Jane is 12, and exactly. And so that is super, super common. And the unfortunate thing is I've seen on slightly more recent ones, censuses where they purposely say, went to their house and they weren't home, and they just leave like a blank section. They never used to write that. I'm sure they did skip over people. But it was like, I think it was one of the 1950s ones. I was like, oh, they like admitted that they just skipped this house. And I was like, yeah, that hurts me.
Or they got the names and everything else is blank because not home, and they never bothered to go back.
Yeah. And that's always very disappointing. All right, quickly before we go back, I want to ask you one more question about, I don't know very many like TV shows or movies that kind of center on genealogy. There's lots of documentaries, obviously. Do you see the field represented well in the modern media? It's kind of, there's not as many. I feel like most of them are nonfiction rather than fiction when you come to like archaeologists, and you got Indiana Jones and all that stuff. But how do you see the field of genealogy in modern media? So
honestly, there's only a couple that are actually work it. So like, you know, Finding Your Roots.
Love it.
And then there was one Ancestor Race a while ago.
Oh, yes.
Which was really interesting because like they gave them clues. So the genealogist in the background figured out people. And so they sent these couples or these families, that usually it was two people, like either husband and wife or like brother, sister, father, daughter, whatever. And the clue is you had to find this person. That's really then cool. When they found them, then they had to like guess, or they would find out how they're connected. And there was a lot of people that had extra family, like they found their dad, like their biological dad. Like they'd never seen them before, so like they're meeting them for the first time.
That's so cool.
But for the most part, I would say there was probably 5 or less TV shows that had to deal with genealogy in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I think it is kind of a new thing. And I was going to say, I love Finding Your Roots, but the one I prefer is the longer form where it focuses on one person for a little bit of a longer time, which what is it called? It's a British version, and oh my god, it's not fine. It's gosh dang it. Who Do You Think You Are? Who Do You Think You Are? Yep. Is one of my favorites because I really like seeing they do much bigger picture. Like Finding Your Roots has a couple people per episode, but Who Do You Think You Are has full episodes. They are all celebrities. And then I also am really addicted to, there's a British show where they connect people with people they're missing. Like siblings, or they don't know who their dad is, and things like that. And those I get very obsessed with because I'm just like, I just want to see them reunite and like learn more things about them. And there are some really great episodes. There's actually a very good episode of Who Do You Think You Are? There's 2 of my favorites. We hate J.K. Rowling in this thing. She does have a very fascinating episode of this series, mostly because she finds out that one of her French ancestors won the Legion d'Honneur, which she won for writing, but she had no idea. And there's this very emotional part where essentially they're like, do you have his Legion d'Honneur? She goes, no. And they gift it to her. And I was bawling.
Oh, that's cool.
But this is years before she became a asshat. But my other favorite episode is Zooey Deschanel. If anybody wants a recommendation, Zooey Deschanel's ancestors were vital in the Civil War, in housing African Americans and saving them during a really, oh God, what is it called? It's a rebellion, an African American slave rebellion where they kill a enslaver, and her relatives housed them, and this entire incident is what instigates John Wilkes Booth to go and kill Lincoln, like this entire rebellion. The Turner. Thank you, Dr. Hubbs. Yeah, Nat Turner. So Zoe Deschanel has no idea because her family was Quakers, and it was this Quaker couple that were able to smuggle them out. Crazy story. And like, yes, there are definitely celebrities that have very, very nonchalant, like not that interesting lives, but ancestors' lives. But I do recommend it. It's just both that and Finding Your Roots are just like amazing shows. And the ones that do talk about non-celebrities. There are, a couple of them.
And genetic genealogy is becoming more of a thing too. Like Tasha said, the genetic detective with CC Moore.
Yes.
They're, finding the Golden State Killer, all DNA. So it's genealogy 100%. But they don't talk about it.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
the thing. Like, they don't get into the weeds of how they matched and they used the DNA to get to there. Yeah. Just like, we figured it out.
Yeah, we use these databases. That is actually one of the reasons why my brother did not pay me back for buying my parents' ancestry test, because he said that if he bought it, that it is unethical, so then he can't commit a crime. And I told him, that sucks, because my DNA is already in there, buddy, so if you commit a crime, somebody's going to find you already. And I'm really pissed that he never paid me back the $30.
But Ancestry, they have to have a warrant. Unless you go to GEDmatch.
Yeah. I've heard of
GEDmatch is, they work with, and you can sign stuff off. They have to have a warrant to mess with that.
Why did my camera?
Uh-oh.
No, I'm still on. I don't know why my camera. Oh, can you still hear me now?
I can.
Okay. I
can't see you, but I can hear you.
Yeah, I don't know why my camera just decided it's gonna nope out when it was literally working perfectly. Oh, there we go. Now we're gone.
I was gonna say, I could see you on TikTok just fine.
Yeah. It's only on our shared thing, auto. All right. So do you want to ask me some questions? So we're mostly talking about genealogy, but this is like a cool collaborative thing, because like technically we can do genealogy in the ancient world. And so I asked Allison to come up with some questions to ask me about genealogy, and then obviously funerary practices with her work with tombstones, because obviously ancient Egypt, they love all their funerary practices. So that's like half of their life in some cases.
For the audiences, if you walk through a cemetery, if you look left and you look right, you will find an obelisk. And that's from Egypt.
Somewhere.
So my first one was, when we say ancient Egyptian genealogy, what sources are we really using, and who gets preserved in the records?
So when it is not something that is extensively studied by Egyptologists, but it is a pretty big interest of mine. And I told this to Allison before when I was doing the notes, totally not this morning. I really thought that I was going to find more when I was doing a little bit of research on it. And the unfortunate thing is I just kept coming up with genetics and the genetic testing that has been done on mummies. And I'm like, that's not what I'm talking about in this case. I am not talking about genetics. I am not talking about genomes. We're talking about like creating family trees of ancient Egyptians in this case. And it's a big puzzle, just like it is normally. But the records are scarce, like so scarce. And so it's one of those things that is very, very complicated to do. And it technically, for the most part, requires either translations of text already made, or you got to read it yourself so you can figure it out. And so I think that might be one of the reasons why it's very limiting. And certain books definitely talk about some of this stuff, but I don't think they talk about it like it's sort of an actual study. I think they just sort of say, oh, well, this is their family. And I'm like, but we can learn. We can learn like a lot about it and stuff. So the best genealogies that we have are royal families, which I would say, if you're talking medieval genealogies, and if you're talking like even modern genealogies, a lot of the best ones are going to be for royal families. So this is not nearly unheard of. The New Kingdom family tree is probably one of the best ones that we have. We have about a 12-generation family tree. Of course, this does not confirm or deny every single relation, because I like to leave it up to chance that there is a very high possibility that some of these kids are not actually the kids of pharaohs. Like, I don't know. I just like, they have so many wives, And that's the other thing, is a lot of the times we don't sometimes know the wives. We will know it's the great royal wife, who more than likely is supposed to be the mother of the heir, but Tutankhamun, we don't know his mom. We have the mummy that we believe is his mom, but we don't know who she is, because she's not Kia and she's not Nefertiti. Those are like the two big no's, and those are the only two named wives of Akhenaten that we know. So we're like, well, they're not there, but it's obviously somebody. It's somebody. Yeah, so somebody. So I leave it to the possibility that this is never going to be 100% accurate, and it's something that we cannot prove. It is so ancient. Like, DNA hasn't done, especially for the Tutankhamun family and a lot of these New Kingdom families that have confirmed things. A lot of people doubt these genetics because we don't really know how DNA degrades over time. And it's just one of those things that we don't really know. And unfortunately, it also gets muddled because the royal families all married their siblings.
I was going to ask that.
Yes. It is all extremely muddled because whenever you look at like genetic testing, if you and your sibling get an ancestry test and then you get your parents to do it, like, it will give you a percentage, and Ancestry has that format that tells you this percentage means this is your cousin, this is your mother, da 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 da. When there is unfortunately incest, those percentages are just a little bit
all bets are off.
Yeah, all bets are off. Matt, a lot are, but not nearly as many as I think people think. And it's sometimes very hard because there's also just other genetics that are not necessarily because of incest, but are just because somebody had illnesses. Tutankhamun's cleft feet, like his club feet, that could be from incest of genetics. It just could also be like people have club feet. That's just something that happens with genetics and stuff. So it's not always the same. Yes, Tasha, I've seen that happen. That's one of those weird things where the family tree's a circle.
It's called a wreath. It's a family wreath.
Family wreath. I love that. I know. I'm always, one of the things I'm very adamant about whenever I talk about Hatshepsut is Hatshepsut and Tutmosis III. I always describe Tutmosis III as her stepson nephew. Like, I literally, like, I will never do that to any other person. Like, I'll say, yeah, it's a sister and his wife, but like stepson nephew always has to be included whenever I talk about Tutmosis III. Yes, so Otto, for ancient Egyptians, it is exclusively royals. And honestly, I was going to say originally it's exclusively the crown princes, like the people who are actually ruling. But I did actually find an example of another princess who married her brother, even though neither of them became king or queen. So I thought it was exclusively with like the crown prince is expected to marry his sister or his half sister, but I have found evidence of that just still in the royal family. So again, New Kingdom 12 generations, going from the technically even into the second intermediate period with Sennacht Ere Amos and his wife Teti Sheri, all the way down to Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun is essentially the end of that really, really long 12 generation line. It's probably the longest one that I can think of within ancient Egyptians. There's a pretty long one with the Ramesses. It's about 5 generations because surprisingly, even though there are 11 Ramesses, only the first couple are actually related to each other. Ramses the Third is not related to Ramses the Second. There essentially was a civil war, and we don't really know sort of what happened, but we know obviously you have your birth name. You can absolutely name him after a famous pharaoh right before you when you know you're going to be pharaoh.
Sure.
So some of the sources that we can use to sort of determine these genealogies, at least for royal families, what we have is King's List. They are not the best. They are really great for looking at the succession of pharaohs, but again, not great for familial relationships. But it's kind of a good place to start because you can assume if this guy ruled and then this guy ruled afterwards, maybe they are father and son. But you need kind of other things that can confirm sort of that relationship. And then you also have to remember that King's Lists do not include everybody because they will exclude people that they don't think are worthy to be in the King's List, like Hatshepsut and Akhenaten and Tutankhamun. They are ousted out of there. They are not included on that. No problem, Dash. No, I think you're good. We're talking about ancient Egyptian genealogies and what textual sources we have for it. And I know I love Useful Charts. If you have never seen Useful Charts is a really great YouTube page. They do a lot of cool genealogy stuff, mostly about modern genealogy, but they do have an Egyptian one as well. If you guys haven't seen that one.
I actually have. They print those too, don't they?
They do. Yeah, Useful
Yeah,
Charts.
I have one for the royal family.
I love that. Yeah, I kind of like the Egyptian one. I need to see if he does one that's just the 18th dynasty, because that is like my preferred time of like time period and stuff that I like. Hi Silver, welcome on in. We're not talking about aliens, but we would love it. I know we're gonna be an ad. I'm gonna take a quick pause, and before I finish talking about Egypt stuff. But if anybody has any questions, feel free, put them in, and we can answer them. I know the ad will go on for another about 2 minutes and stuff. Hello, Moxie. Welcome on in. I'm going to type it out so people who can't hear me. I did, Matt. I did have a fun break. I still have a lot of stuff that I got to do. Yeah, unfortunately the ads, people who do not subscribe can't hear what I say. TikTok, everyone can hear what I say. So TikTok, you're more than welcome to ask questions. But okay, I'm gonna chug some water. There's always so much talking. Usually at the end of my lectures, I'm just like absolutely dying. And that tells me, I always think that when I'm playing my games, I'm talking a lot, but it turns out like I get really focused and I get really quiet. So whenever I'm doing a lecture, it is talking constantly. Oh, Josie, this is a great question. We will talk about that. How long have you been in profession, Matt? We'll answer these questions when the ad's over. Although Matt can hear you if you want to answer that question because he's a sub.
A long time, but not a long time, because I don't know if it's really a profession. Calling? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, you said you've been doing genealogy since you were like, what, 9?
Kid. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Why, how old do you think I am?
No.
We'll play that game.
No, absolutely not.
I know you know, Mr. Peanut Gallery over there. We'll just say 30 plus years.
Mm-hmm. And then the cemetery cleaning a little bit like less, but very much intertwined.
Yeah, that's only like 5-6.
Mm-hmm. All right, we are back from the ad. Josie, great question. I'll let Crazy Cemetery Lady answer that if you would like, but I also have an answer to it as well. Why do so many people claim Native American ancestry when they actually have none?
Yeah, so there's that's kind of 2-part too. Mm-hmm. So if you, and it depends on what test, because there's lots of tests out there.
Yeah.
If you take a DNA test, sometimes even if you are, it's not going to show up.
True.
Because they don't have it calibrated for a lot of that. Yeah. It's looking at farther back. Like if you look at my DNA results, it'll say your predicted how long ago your family came over. So if I hadn't done my genealogy and if I just took my DNA as gospel, my family came over from Germany 2 generations ago.
Ooh. Mm-mm.
No, literally 1710. Because they were such a tight community, thank God there wasn't a whole lot of too much going on, but they married in their community. So the German is strong in the DNA. So it made it look like they just got here when really it's been before the U.S. was the U.S.
Yeah.
And then it used to be harder to prove. So you had people that were saying that they're Native American for not always nefarious purposes, but sometimes because, you're going to get money. You
Land.
get portions of land. You get portions of casinos and money for, those casinos being run on Native American land. And they didn't have the access to the records that they do now, although the records are complete. But they have now. Mind you, I'm pulling this out of the ethos of my brain.
That is okay.
Is it the Dawes list?
Yeah, I believe it is the Dawes list. Yeah,
the Dawes list that lists all the different tribes and things like that. So that's more readily available now and searchable when it wasn't before. And people just take what their grandma says at face value.
Yes. There is also another kind of scenario to this where if you had African American ancestry or mixed ancestry, it was actually better for you to be labeled as Native American because you had more rights than African Americans. And so there is evidence of people who are mixed race ancestry and identified on census records as Native American because they would lose that stigma. And so there's a lot of situations, and no situation is the same, but it's the same thing like with the DNA itself. Like she said, like things just don't pop up. The other thing is if you and your sibling do it, sometimes your sibling will have a 0.1% higher because it also just depends on your actual genes. Things get passed down and things get strangely sort of diluted, if that makes sense, depending on how far back that ancestry was. And so the unfortunate thing is there are situations where you have that family oral history and it is not true. The very stereotypical, your grandmother was a Cherokee princess. If you always notice, it's always Cherokee. There are so many Native American communities, but it's always your grandmother was a Cherokee princess. It's always Cherokee is always the one that is mentioned. And it's not saying that it is incorrect, that family story is incorrect. It just means you got to do a little bit more investigating. There have been serious, I can't remember, I don't remember any of the details of this, but bear with me. You could probably Google it pretty easily. There was a person who very much was intertwined with modern Native American activism and culture, and wrote books and talked about it, and then discovered that they actually had no ancestry. And this was like a very recent thing that happened. And there are people that actively do that knowing, sort of figuring out that they didn't have it, and they continue doing it. This was a person, I think it was a gentleman, and he had to essentially come out with like sort of a statement saying that like, I was told this, I was raised in the other thing is remember, identity is a choice. Again, remember what I said, like I am half genetically Irish, actually weirdly over half, which doesn't make any sense because obviously you have 4 grandparents, but I don't identify as Irish at all. That is not something that I was raised in. That is not something that I know anything about. I identify as Hungarian American. This person, if I remember correctly, because their parents also believed this, he was raised in the community. He went to events. He like worked in this culture. So not only that, it was also a raised identity. It was something that he was absolutely intertwined with. And then he realizes there's no genetic thing. It's like finding out like you're switched at birth, which surprisingly happens way too often. Is like, but I was raised and I believe I am Italian because I did all of these activities. And then you realize I'm not Italian at all, but you were raised in that. And so identities are choices. They are not always actually what your ancestry DNA test tells you. Yeah. And
I have 0% Italian. 0. But I grew up in an Italian household. Yeah. Like, if you ask me, like, well, what are you, I'm Italian.
Yeah.
No. None.
Yeah. And this happens. And you got to think of people who are adopted and that separation of like, you are adopted from China. You don't grow up in that. You are still Chinese, but you don't have those cultural factors that are kind of what help raise you. And so identity is there's one graphic that I found that has been very good. And I always lose it every single time, where it's this it's not a Venn diagram in which the two circles overlap. It's circles within circles. And there's like the really big circle, and then there's this circle. There's your ethnicity, and there's your sexuality. And it's all just these circles inside of big circles that are all social constructs. And so it gets a little bit complicated. Do you want to answer Moxie's question before I go back talking about Egyptian genealogy?
So it's a quaternary ammonia. Now it sounds harsh. It's not. It's got a cleaner, and it's got a quant ammonium in it. You do not want to use household cleaners on headstones. I don't care what kind of headstone it is. I don't care if it's the toughest, meanest, biggest, baddest headstone. Don't use. If you can find it under your sink, don't put it on a headstone. No. Quant-based ammonia is what you are looking for, and you want one that's been on the market for a while and tested. Not something that they've been working on for like a year or two. So I would say 90% of what I use is it's called D2, the letter D/2 solution, and you can get it at preservation stores. I do have a link in my bio in my link tree for where I order it from. And then on granite, like harder stones, I'll use the original formula Wet and Forget. It's the same base for it, and you can get that at Tractor Supply, Lowe's, or anything like that. The original form. So usually you can either get it in this like spray bottle that you can just spray and it's ready, or it's a concentrate and you mix it with water. Yep. So those are the two. And again, if it's like a newer stone, Wet and Forget's going to be fine. It's cheaper. It's easier. You know, you're not going to have a problem. The older marble stones, like the 1820s that I deal with, I use D2, and that's what they use at Arlington. So.
Yeah. Another great question from Josie. Are maternal lines less often researched because last names tend to follow paternal lines? Personally, I would say no, but historically, maybe.
I think that they are researched, but they are the brick walls.
They are the brick walls.
Because their names changed. So you have, you know, a new wife, she changes her name, and then she becomes the wife of. I mean, you can get into, you know, feminism and everything else later, but the fact is prior to 1900 or even a little bit afterwards, you were Mrs. Smith.
Yeah.
That's just the way that it worked. And you can be mad about it later. But it makes it difficult to go backwards. Well, okay, unless you can find that marriage document, or if you're super lucky, her father or her mother was living with them in the census.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's the mother-in-law. So bingo, now you have her name. You might just be out of luck to try and find out her line.
Yeah, it is definitely hard. It's also hard when women marry multiple times because they don't change their name back to their original last name. They will keep that last name. So I once went through a what's it called? A pension document for a woman who married 4 times. And I had to find all of those documents to prove how her name switched. And the lucky thing about the pension document is she did have to explain it in her own words, which was great. It's like so beautiful. She just wrote the whole thing out. Her first husband unfortunately died in a carriage accident. It was like the day after their wedding. It was crazy. I was like, this is the craziest story I've ever heard in my life. But yeah, it's women's names are not recorded. And I do hate it when they do just Mrs. Smith. They don't even give a first name, because that also does happen on some documents. Luckily, mostly not censuses until you go way, way far back.
When their name isn't listed.
Yeah, when their name isn't listed at all, which is always crazy.
Yep.
But that is true. Yeah, when you get a little later, some of their marriage documents say multiple times. Sometimes censuses even, I think, sometimes say how many times you've been married. But yeah, sometimes it gets complicated, but you got to push through it because it'll be on some weird church document or something. Or your father has to sign off on their marriage if it's like really, really old. And then you got the dad's name and you're like, perfect, great.
Yeah. Prior to 1850, the 1850 census is the first sentence that lists everybody in the household. Now, it doesn't say how they are all related, however.
I'm so glad we're talking about this because I literally do a program at the Archaeology Museum where we talk about genealogy and we talk about censuses, and I teach the kids all about censuses. And I have like a little chart that I made, which is what I pick out 3 censuses and what things are talked about. And we talked about how, like, does that give us the full picture of a person? And this is like the exact same conversation I have with the kids, which is like my favorite. And one time I actually had somebody who worked for the Census Bureau, one of the moms, which she came up to me later. She goes, I work for the Census Bureau. I'm so happy you talked about the census. I was like, I love the census. The census is great. So Matt, yes, there are a couple sources where you can see the census for free. Family Tree is one place that you can see a lot of stuff for free. You might have to make an account, but a lot of things can be free. But you can only see up to 1950. They release it ever so often. So there's no census after 1950 that is released to the public. But yeah. Ancestry is expensive. I use my mom's account. But yeah, there are plenty of places. Family Search. I keep saying it wrong. FamilySearch.org is one of the best. Too. Yeah.
I think Reclaim the Records has a bunch.
Yeah, as well. Those are some really good ones to get a lot of records too. Family Search has a lot of stuff scanned. It doesn't have everything digitized and searchable, but all the standard stuff like censuses is absolutely in there. So continuing my little rant on ancient Egyptian genealogy. Again, when we have like the sources that we have for those kings lists, typically those are just random texts and they can be kind of anywhere. In some examples, like often kings, especially a king and their son, are very infrequently depicted together. Kings and their daughters are depicted a lot of times together. Kings and their sons, it's a weird taboo. It only happens every so often, but it's some sort of weird taboo potentially of like, he's going to be the future king, and so I'm not going to show him. But we do have some exceptions. So like Seti I creates a giant temple in Abydos. His son Ramses the Great decides to add on to it, and there's this depiction of the two of them together. And we get that text saying, this is his son. And you're like, cool, perfect, great. A lot of times it is very, very random texts, and a lot of this is from titles and epithets, which are essentially just a title that it comes after your name. Anyone of a certain class in ancient Egypt could have one of those titles, but for royals, absolutely. And the lovely thing is they all stack on top of each other. So a prince or a princess is going to have the title king's son or king's daughter. They also sometimes get more elaborate king's son of his body, king's daughter of his body. And then you will also have titles of sister or brother of the king or mother of the king. You won't typically see father of the king because more than likely if your father is the king, he's dead. And so sometimes you don't really need to put that. And you would also presume he's also a king. But you have to kind of use context of like, okay, this title on this one wall says he's the son of a king. And then you actually see a king's cartouche in the other side of that room. You can probably guess that it at least dates that same time period. So that's probably going to be his dad. Unfortunately, there's a lot of guesstimation for some of this stuff. The other funny thing is that like, so queens will receive the title mother of the king as well, but they do get a little confusing because they stack. And of course, because they don't name the king. So you have to use all this other context, just like an archaeologist would. So you can have one woman who would have the title king's daughter, king's sister, king's wife, and king's mother. One could have all 4 of those titles. More than likely, this indicates separate kings, because obviously some of these relationships don't make any sense.
Hopefully not. I mean, hopefully it's not one. That'd be a problem.
Unfortunately, there is sort of a trend where some of these New Kingdom pharaohs married their daughter, but it's not in the same sense of like actually marrying them. It's sort of elevating their position. And they also frequently get a title called God's Wife of Amun, where they actually are sort of expected to be this high priestess title that actually has a lot of political power, but they're still married to their dad. So there are some weird stuff, but like it's not the same thing that you think of it in that way.
Right.
But so if this woman
like
is the
carnal knowledge of their wife.
No carnal knowledge of that sense. But so a woman who is the king's daughter, the king's sister, the king's wife, and the king's mother, that's at least 3 kings, because king's sister and king's wife are more than likely going to be combined. And by being king's wife, you are thus the queen. And so that at least tells you that she is the descendant of a king. She is the sibling of a king and gets married to the king. There is also the possibility that 2 of her brothers become king, and one could be one brother and one could be the other brother. It is also common, though, if like you marry your brother, he dies, you might get married to your other brother. That also happens. So weirdly, similarly to some modern genealogy where your husband dies and you marry his brother. Because that definitely happens. And I've seen that happen many a time. But then when we're looking at non-royals, it gets more complicated because those types of titles don't exist for non-royals. But you do get things saying, Nefer, son of Remu. And you're like, great, I know his dad's name. Like, perfect. But a lot of the stuff comes from really random inscriptions all over their tombs, typically. There's like a group of nomarchs or governors in Beni Hassan. All of their tombs are next to each other. And through looking at the text of all of these tombs, we can suddenly connect people together and say, wait, that's probably the same dude who's buried 2 tombs over. That's probably his dad and then his dad before. And so we have a couple generations in this particular area with these high-ranking officials. And you do also get, like, there are certain families. I was telling Allison before we started that I was doing research on one of my dog's videos, which I love making. I had to get a book from interlibrary loan, and I had to read it all before I could send it back, and I had to take just a giant picture of it. And this dog is featured in this one tomb that's a family tomb. It's not always the most common. A lot of tombs are usually meant for just like an individual and his wife. But this was like a family tomb that essentially over 3 generations of this family were buried in this tomb. And so family members continued to add what we call false doors, which are these large, big stones that look like a fake door, but they usually have a depiction of the deceased in sort of this offering spell. And what we're very lucky with is something in that nature. You'll have the deceased, you'll have his wife, and everybody is labeled. Like, it's not even full text, it's not full sentences. It's just each little person gets a little label. And so it would say Sa is son in ancient Egyptian, and Sat is daughter. And it would say his son, so Sa-F, and then the name. And then this person over here is labeled as his daughter. And then sometimes you even get his daughter's daughter. And so then you get, okay, wait, this is his grandchild now. And so sometimes you'll get that on one big stela. More often than not, it's a lot of connecting the dots and trying to see if these are the same people in the same time period. Because names do repeat just like they do today. You do get the similarly named people and you're like, is this the same Ahahotep than that Ahahotep? Or are these 2 different women? And there are quite a few problems within royal families that, as Egyptologists, it's literally called the Ahahotep problem, because there's like 3 Ahahotep, potentially 3 Ahahoteps that are within this royal family that we can't figure out who it is or if they're all the same person. And there are a few of those that we have these names and they only are brought up once. And you're just like, is that the right person? I don't know. So it makes sense why people don't research it too much, because it is a very complicated process and you really need like a well-preserved tomb especially for a non-royal person. You need the perfect amount of stuff to be able to actually put together that family tree.
There's a good question in the comments.
Yes. I'm going to skip ahead to something I wrote down, which wasn't relevant to any of the questions, but I wrote it down. Yes, Dash, there is possibility. And where did I put that in my notes? We've talked about this before, because there is the oldest documented genealogy is that of the Chinese philosopher Confucius. And he lived in, 551 to 479 BCE. So he lived actually during the late period of ancient Egypt, right before Alexander the Great takes over the Persian Empire. And there is a actual documented genealogy of him going over 100 generations, about 2,500 years. And just recently, there's a whole little section on it. If you go to the Wikipedia for family tree and you scroll down, there's a whole little paragraph about this, that apparently, I think in the late 90s, a whole group of people wanted to sort of reinvigorate this and see if they could record this again. And it has, according to it, like 2 million people are part of this sort of family tree. And they, in this most recent, in the 90s, they tried to figure out how many living members. And it was still like about 1 million people. Because you got to think, a family tree is a triangle. You got Confucius at the top, that's one person, one generation, and then it just like keeps on going further and further of his descendants. And so there's still a lot of people alive that are like directly related to it. Thank you, Alex, for putting that link in the chat. But yes, we'll talk about it in a second if you're able to do it to Egyptian people. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but there is one. But it's also because they've been recording it since he died, sort of. Like, people have been recording it for a long time, where it actually becomes sort of part of their active memory, if that makes sense.
And if I could add a little bit to it.
Absolutely.
It's possible, but is it always probable? Not so much. So, like, yes, you can, especially when you tap into the royals. So,
yes.
What is it, 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon? Like, you're gonna, if you are able to trace it back to a royal, then yes, you can go backwards. Yes. I was able to trace the adoptive line of my great grandma back to Mary Boleyn, Anne Boleyn's sister.
Very cool.
So the Carey line. So yes, you can, but is it always probable? No, most people cannot.
Yeah.
And if somebody says that they've traced their stuff back to, like 400, probably not. Not.
And out of how many possible lines in your family, you found one. That's the other thing, is that you might be able to find like one famous person, but that does not mean that you can trace everything back.
Yeah.
Because you will hit those brick walls, because the thing when you get to a certain point that is so old, the only genealogies that were recorded are royals. Uh-huh. So like you reach a point where they're like, they didn't care about genealogy because they were just regular old people. The royals cared about genealogy to prove that they were royal.
Right. And to prove their titles and how they had to. So Burke's literally has a book going back hundreds and hundreds of years, so that this way, when there was a crisis or there was a problem, like I can't remember which one it was. There was a king that died, and it was in France, and he didn't have an heir, and technically the next in line would have been the King of England, because the royals married royals. So they ended up having to go back like 4 generations to a son, because in France only the sons can inherit. So even though like the English king's mother was the daughter of the French king, it was a female line. So
not allowed. Yeah, absolutely. Moxie, answering your question, so with Pharaoh's concubines and minor wives, absolutely not. We don't even know their names most of the time, and so children at that point did not get titles. We know so little. Like, I recently was looking up something that, like, we, by happenstance, know the names of 3 minor wives of Thutmose III, and that is because they had a preserved burial, and they did have, like, a pretty elaborate burial, but at the rate, even though they were minor wives, they're obviously not that minor, because they got that fancy funeral. There are probably countless people women that kind of went under the scene and again never did it. Like, the great example is Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun more than likely is born out of either a very, very minor wife or some sort of concubine, because Akhenaten was desperate for a son. He had 4 daughters with Nefertiti, and even though his wife Nefertiti is wielding a lot of power, he wanted that son. And so that is the only reason that we probably don't know Tutankhamun's mom's name, because it's just, she's random. It sucks.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
He's the son.
Yeah, he's the king. It doesn't matter. And it's also hard to say that, like, Tutankhamun may not even known his mom very well. Like, it's one of those things. We don't know what it was like in sort of the female spaces of these palaces and stuff. Sorry, I'm checking if I missed anything. I love what you said, Tasha. I always thought we were related to Hungarian royalty. How do you know if you don't share anything about your family? I can't even trace it. It was one of my favorite things is that I was raised Catholic, and so one of the things we talked about in school was that Saint Elizabeth of Hungary marries Saint Stephen of Thuringia. And I knew about Thuringia when I was very young because it's very similar to my last name, and I was like, oh, that's my family. And also, my brother's name is Stephen, and I'm like, oh, that's like the most common name for Hungarian men. And I was like, whoops. Oh, whoops, never mind. But yeah. Very quickly, because I know don't want to take too much of your time. Is there a favorite time period that you have studying genealogy? Is there just something you prefer to study? Time period, place?
I really enjoy, like, the 1850s to 1900s. Just because
I agree.
You're past so we talked about the 1850 census. That's the first year they're all listed. Mm-hmm. Trying to find women or children or connections prior to that is like trying to make a swan dive off of a 40-foot ladder into a swimming pool.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work well. And there's, you had the Industrial Revolution. Like, mm-hmm. There was so many things going on, and I've found so many just not only off the wall stories, but like just amazing stories, amazing families, like just mm-hmm. resilience. Like you'll hear that word in my scripts a lot, but it's just, they were just such a resilient people mm-hmm. of that time frame.
I love that time. That's a really good one too. I also think it's a very big, while it isn't the definite emergence of newspapers, it is a time when newspapers become a little bit more gossipy, and just like fully letting out like the social pages and just like fully letting out all of this stuff. Even going back to my grandfather's adoption, I went through the newspapers and I went to go see what his mom was doing, and she was in the social papers all the time doing these like little random things. And there was one that she was like, oh, she went to tea with 2 friends. And I'm like, why is this getting included in the social pages? But I was so happy that it did, because when I looked at the date, I realized that she was probably about like 3 months pregnant at that time. And I was like, whoa, I was like mind blown. Like, I was like, wait, this is so crazy that I have this, even this very random thing of she goes to tea. I have this time. And I was like, wow. So I do love newspapers around that time, is when it really starts popping off and getting very, you get so much more details than you ever could have imagined.
And there was no trigger warnings either.
No.
There was no trigger warnings.
Absolutely not.
Like, somebody died horrifically, they give you the details. Like,
full detail.
Oh yeah, like, and then this dropped, and this happened, and then they tried to do this, and they pulled him out slowly, but only half of him came out. Like,
yes, yeah. I love that, Tasha. They went to go visit somebody else. I'm like, why do I need to know that? But okay. Yeah. My favorite one is a completely random story that like I was looking at a newspaper for something completely else. This is not somebody who I was trying to figure out who's related to. It just was the big news story. In New York City, there was this young teenage girl who her dad owned some sort of factory, and she stole the entire wages for the entire factory workers and ran away with 2 boys to upstate New York, and they had to drag them both back, and there was all of this court case and all of this stuff. And years later, when she was older, they still mentioned her as the girl who ran off with her dad's wages. And there's this hysterical newspaper where you can tell it is this news reporter telling you out exactly, no, she ran away with 2 boys. She ran away with 2 of them. It didn't make any sense. She only wanted to be romanced by 1, but she did run away with 2 boys. That's the weird part about the story, is that I think he was the getaway driver or something. But the funny thing about one of these newspaper articles is that it's almost a play-by-play of this reporter going up to the front door of what he thinks thinks is the house or something, and he's just writing out word for word what this person said to him, like, oh, I don't know her, she's a tramp, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's just straight up out in the newspaper. Yeah, except for the stealing part. It was pretty bad. There was a whole big thing, like, when the court cases were covered, that she was crying and stuff like that. But yeah, I love the the Lizzie Borden. Yeah, that's like one of those things. You can read about trials. And I read about a guy who died falling down a well. That was a pretty bad one. And yeah, they describe every little inch of it. And I'm like, geez Louise. But, all right, what's your next question for me?
Okay. What did Egyptians think kept a person alive in memory?
Yes.
Name, image, offering, location, lineage?
Absolutely. The interesting thing is they definitely think about lineage a little bit, but I feel like that's probably more for royals than it is for anybody else. And their tombs are going to be one of the most important things to help keep somebody's memory alive, because it not only like physically holds their mummy, which is obviously the essence of themselves, but it also has depictions of their lives and their families and what they both did in their life, as well as what they want to do in the afterlife. Ancient Egyptian art, I always say, is not art. It is not meant to be aesthetic. It is all meant to be functional. All of those depictions of them working in the fields and them creating gold offerings and gold necklaces, all of those things are meant to help that person go to the afterlife and help them work in the afterlife. Because their ultimate goal is to go to, we call the Field of Reeds or the A'aru. And it's essentially like real life, but it's in a land with the gods. So you need to eat, you need to sleep, you need to drink, you need to eat, you need to do all the things that you did in real life, but you get to do it in a place with the gods, and you don't have to worry about dying again. But that also means that you have to bring all the stuff with you, because you can't go empty-handed. And so that's why they have to preserve their bodies. That's why they bring all their material goods. And one of the reasons that the ancient Egyptians they always wanted things to continue, and they wanted people to know about their past. And that is kind of mainly because of how they saw their soul. Ancient Egyptian soul is 9 parts, which is super complicated. I know. And all of those things are needed in the afterlife, and they all have different uses. So I'm going to read them out very quickly because I never remember any of them. So the ket is the physical body of the mummy. You need your mummy to be preserved so that all of the other parts of your soul can go back to the body if necessary. The sa is the spiritual body. The ren is the name or the identity. And then the ba is the personality. It's usually a little falcon with the head of the person, and they can fly back and forth. The ka is the vital essence of the person. That is the part of the soul that needs to eat, that needs to drink, that needs those things. The ib is the heart. You need your heart, which is why it's one of the only organs that is left in your body. Or they give you sometimes they'll take it out and they'll give you a heart scarab, which is like a really chunky scarab. It's really big. But you still need that. So, you also have the shuyet, which is the shadow, the sekem, which is like the power and form. It's a little bit more elusive. And then all together, this is the ak, not the ankh, but the ak, which is sort of that all collective spirit. And out of all of those, the most important things are the ba, the ka, and the ren. The ren is your name. Your name needed to be remembered. It's very similar to the movie Coco. I always use this as a really good reference of like, your name needs to be preserved or else you will be forgotten. And in the same aspect, if somebody knows your name in certain aspects, they have power over you. So a Book of the Dead is sort of this cheat sheet to the afterlife. In the Book of the Dead are the names of demons that you might encounter. If you know their name, you can overpower them. You can get to those Field of Reeds. And we also have evidence of festivals of celebrating their ancestors. There's one called the Beautiful Festival of the Valley, and it's essentially the equivalent of the Day of the Dead. It is a day that you would bring offerings to your ancestors and to respect those who have died before you. And the other thing is getting offerings. So offerings are super fun because they can be done physically or they can be done quote unquote virtually is the best way I can describe it. Or I guess symbolically is probably a better word. Your deceased family member, they need to eat in the afterlife. They're going to be able to bring a lot of stuff with them, hopefully in their tomb. They're going to eat it. You need to continuously feed your deceased family member. At the very base, it's feeding, but you can also provide them other things like oil and linen and perfumes and things like that. But at the very basis, they need to eat. And so this could be by physically giving them offerings and bringing physical pieces of food or physical linen and perfume by laying it at their tomb. The essence essentially would be then absorbed by the deceased, and then priests who would patrol the valleys and patrol the tombs would take that food as their payment for making sure that the tombs all looked nice and no one was looting them. Even though it definitely seems that priests were not very attentive because lootings happened all the time. And then the other thing is that you can sort of do this symbolically by essentially commissioning a offering stela or something called an offering plate, which are drawn offerings or a text that says, an offering that the king gave and Anubis, I give you bread, beer, oxen, goose, all of these things. And then they give it to that person. This is one of the biggest ways that we can find genealogies because all the family members want to make sure they get listed on these stela. And these are the things where you see the deceased and his wife sitting in a chair with an offering table in front of them, and all of their kids are lined up underneath them. And the one kid is a little bit bigger. That's the kid who probably paid for this commission. And all the other kids kind of sneak their way in and get their name on there so that they know, their ancestor knows that they are also included it and stuff. So Tasha, the very basics, bread and beer. Those are the first types of offerings that you need. You need bread and beer. You can sustain yourself just on that in ancient Egyptian.
Sounds like a good Friday night.
Yeah, bread and beer. That's all you got. And then you get up to like the next most popular offerings are going to be oxen and geese or some sort of fowl. And then again, you get linen, perfume, oil, and then anything else would be physical items like furniture and clothing and jewelry. All of these things would be part of your funeral assemblage in your tomb. But the very big offerings, bread, beer, food, sometimes fruits and vegetables. The other cool thing is we have something called a victual mummy, which is they take a goose, they kill the goose, they cook the goose like they're going to make it, and then they mummify the goose. So it is not an animal mummy that is meant to like invoke some sort of god or goddess, or it's not a pet. It is a cooked offering for you to have in the afterlife. Yeah, cooked goose, cooked like leg of a cow. Those are really common, and I've held a really cool victual goose mummy at my museum in grad school. Hello, New York redneck. Welcome on in. I'm just making sure I didn't miss any other questions. I know I saw a question for Allison. What has been the most challenging thing cleaning headstone? Like telling people and loved ones what you do, or the government asks what you're doing?
Yeah, that's Jay, definitely. He's texting me. He's like, "Can I ask a question?"
Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit. Just give me 1 second. Oh no. Oh my goodness. Maybe turn off your camera and turn it back on if you can hear me. Are the gods angry? I don't think so. Hopefully not. All right. If you can, we might have to restart the whole thing. I know your question broke her. I'm so sorry, Dash. All right. I cannot see or hear you, just so you know. I can try to... Oh. I can hear you, but it's breaking up pretty bad.
Oh boy.
Okay, try again. Thank you, Dash. I'm gonna do this. I'm going to kick you, and then I'm gonna invite you back in. Okay, give me 2 seconds. All right, we're gonna try this. Let's see. Let's try to invite her back in. I'm gonna copy the link again. We might have to move to Discord. It was working pretty well. I just sent you the link again in Discord. I'm sure it's just some Wi-Fi internet issues, which is always hard because that does happen. But we'll give her a quick second. Any other questions? Anything towards me specifically? I don't want to go too much longer just because it's already late. But we got a couple other questions that we had. Hi, Uni Boony. What got me interested in Egyptology or genealogy? Egyptology is pretty easy. I've been interested in it since I was a really little kid. I've always liked history, and the story I always give is that people. My mom gave me Mummies in the Morning, which is a Magic Treehouse book, and they also had a companion novel that was nonfiction, and I read both of them. I read the really cool fiction story about the kids get to travel in time, and then I saw the nonfiction one. All right, I can't hear you yet. Oh. The funny thing is I can hear you clicking perfectly, but I can hear this like feedback of some sort. So interesting. It feels like somebody's fluttering around. I was gonna say, I'm sure everyone can hear it. Yeah, it sounds like a helicopter, but I can't hear your voice because I think it's breaking up so bad. Okay, I have an idea. Let's try something else. I'm gonna hang up and I'm going to call you via Discord, and we're gonna see how that occurs. And maybe what we will try is just doing, if it gets really bad, we can try just doing audio. So the funny thing is I can also hear myself now. Interesting. Can you say something?
Saying that my camera's being used elsewhere.
Oh, okay. That does happen. Okay. Oh, wait, are you trying to do Discord?
Okay. No. What I did was I tried I had to get all the way out, and then I tried to hit the Discord link, and I tried to open up in Firefox, but that's what it was saying before, was all of a sudden.
Okay.
Maybe the selected different camera is used on what is it used?
Okay. Oh, wait. Talk again?
Talk again?
Okay. At least the sound is fixed now. It doesn't sound like a helicopter. But try to, I can tell you're muted, so unmute. We're fixing things. Um, so try. Ooh. We back. Almost. I can't hear you right now, but that's we can work on that. Except you're very blurry, but unfortunately. All right. I don't know why I can't hear you now.
How about now?
Now I can't hear you. Yes. Your
How did
camera's
you manage to break it? I always break stuff.
Your camera's unfortunately very blurry, but maybe if we wait a little bit, maybe it'll unblur itself in a bit. So I don't think it's anything you can change, unfortunately.
So back to the question. The biggest frustration is complying with all the hoops that everybody wants me to jump through in order to touch a headstone. Mm-hmm. So, like, the city of Watertown required me to have a $2 million insurance policy. Like, I'm not...
$2 million?
Yeah, so I'm not going to take the headstone home and, put it through the wood chipper. I'm literally going in there cleaning and fixing them. And most of them are not bigger than me, so it's not like they're going to fall and kill me.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Which is definitely a concern in certain cemeteries, I'm sure.
Right.
But not most.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, there you go, Tasha. All right. So my next question for you, what is, I know we touched on it a little bit, but what is your process of, especially, I want you also to include this with your filming and you filming to put on TikTok. What's your process for picking a tombstone? Oh, hello. Yes, it worked. No. I knew it would unblur eventually. So give us your rundown of like picking a tombstone, cleaning the tombstone, researching the tombstone, posting. What does that sort of process look like for you?
So usually I get permission from the cemetery. Once in a while, there are people that like, hey, my third great grandparents are here. Can you? But most of the time, I get like permission to clean a section, or in more common cases, here's the cemetery, clean what you want. So this year, I am going to start from back to front. It's an extremely old cemetery, so I know like they're all in rough shape. Mm-hmm. But like in last year's cemetery, there's like 14,000 burials in there. Like, I didn't go near the new section because they don't need me. Like, more than likely, they got peeps. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to the older section, and I'm looking for a headstone that doesn't have decorations, doesn't have flowers planted. It doesn't, have anything around it, and it's dirty. It's got moss buildup. It's got lichen. I can't read it. I don't know who's there. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones, or a baby. So if you see a small marble and you can tell that there's like a lamb at the top, that's more than not always, more than likely going to be a child. So those are the ones that I gravitate to because they don't have anybody that looks like they're actively doing anything with the plot.
Yeah.
So I clean it with the biological cleaner. You want to use, honestly, what should be in your kit? The biological cleaner, water, a soft bristle brush. And I mean, like, especially some of the older stones, there's brushes we use and I've actually used a toothbrush before. Mm-hmm. I did a video that I pinned for a while that it was 6 minutes with a toothbrush. And I cleaned an entire small little headstone, and it went from there's writing on that to you could read the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, soft bristle brushes, and then sometimes you might use a scraper. A lot of kits give you these, the plastic paint scrapers.
Yeah.
But we've actually found that they're called Bondo putty knives. So they're silicone, and they're like this big, and they flex. And they work even better because they're softer and they wear away. You want your materials to wear away, not them to wear away on the stone.
Yeah.
So and maybe a toothpick or kebab stick. Like, that's all you really need.
Yeah.
You can get super fancy, and you can get the battery-powered sprayers. You can, like, because I had surgery on my wrist, so I can't, like, trying to pump up some of those sprays, just,
Yeah.
it gets old. And plus, I clean so many. It's worth it for me to get a battery-powered sprayer.
Mm-hmm.
So, I usually go live on TikTok when I clean, and then people like poor Tashi have to look at all the comments that go off the rails.
Off the rails, yep.
Had one say, you know, they thought that I could get an STD by cleaning a headstone. It's there. And then, and I don't normally, I would say 99.9% of the time, I don't know who I'm cleaning. No clue whatsoever.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't know for months. Like, I'm still going through and researching cleans I did in August.
Ah, okay. I was wondering about what your like timeline process is, especially for your videos, because people always ask me for really recent videos. I was like, I don't know how to tell you that I batch film and write everything. So if you leave a comment, I might be able to get to it in like 4 months. I don't even know it. I don't even think I have a date.
4 to 6 business months.
Yeah, I recently was looking through all of my saved comments, which is how I make a lot of my videos, and I was ashamed about how old some of them were, and I still had not made a reply video, but I still want to, and I'm just like, I don't know if there's a point where I'm like, do I cut it off and do I say, or is it just, I don't know. I go back and forth about it sometimes.
Or they ask me about, like, a video that I posted 2 months ago. Yeah. And it's like, well, what do you think? Don't you think that so-and-so could have been a child of so-and-so? And I'm like, what?
Yeah, who?
Like, I slept since then? I don't remember. Like, I'd have to pull the book out, because I do. I put everything, which is one thing I do want to show you. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah. I actually will be doing a backup. Somebody asked me what if they could look at what my backlog looks like, and so I wrote the script. I'm going to film it tomorrow and tell everybody what my process is, because I haven't really done a behind the scenes video on that, but I want people to understand that I'm ashamed at how long these Google Docs are of all of my requests and stuff. It's so beautiful. I love a binder.
I have the yellow paper is the headstone that I cleaned. So if you see a yellow paper, I clean the headstone. And then all the research, the censuses. And then what I do is so this is the third binder for the North Watertown Cemetery. They're 3-inch binders.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a chunky one.
Yeah. And then when I'm done, I donate this to the genealogy department at the library.
I love that.
Because why should somebody else have to do research I already did?
Yeah. That's so good. Oh my God. That's actually awesome. I love that.
Yeah. So I have the video, I research it all, and then I usually have to set a timer. Depending on, like, if it's just one person, I try and limit it to an hour. If I find something at the end, then I'll usually give myself another half an hour. Or if it's a family, I'll do like 2.5 hours to research them. Otherwise, I never get videos out. I'd be going down rabbit holes left and right.
I'm always going down rabbit holes.
I think that so far, this is the 21st of March, I think I've put out 19 videos this month. I missed today, and I think I missed one other day just because it was just so nuts. But, like, a new video. So it's research, and it takes me about, between the research and the editing, the voiceover, adding the pictures. So, like, I actually show the census records or the pictures of the houses or whatever, or where they worked. It probably takes me 3 to 4 hours to edit each video.
Yeah, it's rough. And I have been on a momentum where I've just posted every single day now. There are definitely some days that I miss, but like the reason I've been so stressed lately is because I have, I think, 2 videos left that I filmed about month and a half ago. And so I'm like, I have no scripts written to be able to film, and my only day off is tomorrow. And so all the past few days, all I've been doing is just writing and writing. And the silly thing is that, like, there are some days that are really good, and I will sit here for a full day off and I will write. My record is 56 scripts in one day. And I was really disappointed with myself last week when I only did 11 in a full day. But some of these are very easy for me because I just do so many different series. The one that takes me so long is my dogs video, which is my thesis. That is the basis of a lot of my research. So literally today I was looking, and it's all based on people's requests. So they give me a number and I just have to go through this giant Excel spreadsheet that I made multiple years ago. And I was literally going through it, and I noticed that the dog that the person requested, I didn't have a picture associated with it. So I was like, all right, let's go down the rabbit hole and see if I can figure out if there is actually a picture of this random pre-dynastic pot that it might be in this museum, but I don't even know. It doesn't have an accession number. I don't even know how to find it. And I went on a deep rabbit hole today at work, and I discovered that not only did I find what it was, but I found actually 2 separate instances making scripts for the dogs. I found one dude wrote had 2 errors in the same paper, in which he wrote the accession number wrong. He forgot a dot. He forgot 1 dot, and I could not find it in this museum. I was like, I have the accession number. It should exist. There was a missing dot. It took me forever to figure it out, but I figured it out. So I got that photo for an object that I literally didn't even know what it was. I thought it was a piece of pottery. It's actually a pre-dynastic model of a house, which I have never seen before in my life. And I was like, I'm sorry, what is this? What? And then the other piece, turns out it's actually a duplicate in my corpus, because I found this really great website called Ponda, which is the funniest name ever, but it's the pre-dynastic online research center where they've just been going around to all these museums and taking pictures of pre-dynastic objects. And I discovered it a couple months, and I went through and I found all the dogs and I put them into my corpus as new entries. It turns out one of them was already there. But now I have a picture of it, so I don't care. It's fine. But again, those videos, I only wrote 3 today. That took me half this day. Because I was so deep on the research, because even though I collected all of the images of dogs when I did my thesis 6 years ago, I didn't do any individual research on each of these things. The thesis was just about collecting them all together. I did not do research. And now this is what these videos are doing. But I'm also so glad, because these videos have made me discover so much more. It has made me discover mistakes in my corpus. It's made me discover that I don't actually think this is a dog. This might be a different creature. I've discovered so much more, and I am now at a very, very low percentage of how many don't have photos, which I'm really proud of. I have been able to tear through and get interlibrary loan books so that I can go and find a picture of these objects that I don't have pictures of, which is really cool. But I completely understand that your videos take, and this is why I don't do any editing. My videos are filmed and edited in one fellow swoop. The only thing that I do is I go through right before I post it and I cut off, I cut the gaps in between my clips and I put captions. That is all I do. And I wish I could edit them more, but I have no energy. I have no energy to edit them.
The clipping it and making it flow, and that's the easy part. It's getting the voiceover done and not getting absolutely crucified on pronunciations. Viola versus viola. Let's stop it, people. Yeah. And then trying to put in the census cropped correctly, so that it makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I could throw up a whole bunch of stuff up there and people wouldn't know if that's actually 1010 Superior Street or not. Yeah. You wouldn't know.
Exactly.
But I would know.
And it would annoy you, and you have to have it look nice and be nice and be correct. Yeah. That is definitely a big problem. I've been getting a lot of pronunciation stuff, and I've been getting pronunciation stuff on ancient Egyptian words, which we don't know how ancient Egyptians actually pronounce their language. So that annoys the shit out of me all the time, because I'm just It's Ra
Well,
or
or
Ray. Both are
these
correct. Shut up.
weird small towns or you know, French, you know.
Yeah. Grammar
I
police
try.
are some of my least favorite people. No offense to anybody who is a grammar police. You can be a grammar police, just don't comment it. I'm trying my best.
Well, I mean, you can do it in a nice manner.
That's also true. You
Like,
can try.
there's nice ways to say, you know, well, that was a good try. It's really this, but you know, I give you a B plus.
They never do it
Like,
that
at
way,
least
though.
give me credit. I tried.
Grammar police, yeah. All right. What's your next question for me?
What were common status symbols in tomb design that later Westerners latched onto incorrectly?
Oh, so many. So many. Um, I'm actually planning an entire lecture. I don't know what month it's going to be in this season, but I'm planning an entire lecture called The American Misuse of Egyptology,
Ooh.
because there are so many. There are a lot of Westerners that are part of these organizations that tie their origins to ancient Egypt. So think the Shriners, the Masons, and this is different for every single group. It's also different individually. Like, probably most modern Shriners or Masons don't really think that they derive straight from ancient Egypt. But it is how the basis of a lot of these organizations kind of began. And this has to do with a lot of, like, misplace in genealogy. When there's so many modern people in genealogy, and these are just like normal people that just like genealogy, that really want to connect themselves with ancient peoples. Like, ancient peoples are famous peoples or something, but it is really common to find kind of these Westerners claiming that they can trace their way all the way back to ancient times. You will stumble upon ancestry family trees that are on Ancestry or Family Tree Search or something else, where if you look at the very top of the family tree, there's Adam and Eve. They're just there.
Yeah.
They're just like slapped like against it. And I even realized much later, my great grandfather did that as well when he made our memoir. He put that guy named Wolfgang up at the top. When I looked at the years later in my life, I realized those don't line up. That's not his dad. And he just takes that is a guy that has our last name. That means we're related to him. And I was like, oh, that's not true. But in Ancestry, you will see Adam and Eve up there. You will see Jesus. You'll see Noah. You will see these figures that are added on into the family tree like they are supposed to be father and son when they're obviously not. You look at that person, it's the 1800s, and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. But they just do it. And for the most part, I think people don't 100% believe that, but they really want to. And this is also done with ancient Egyptians. Not as common as I think Adam and Eve, but I have seen comments in my TikTok saying that I am directly related to Ramses II. He's my great-great-granddaddy, and I'm like, okay. I have seen ancient Egyptian kings on ancestry trees, and one of my favorite ones is when I worked at the DAR and I had access to the DAR's genealogy library, there was a book that was for the Ramsey family. So Ramsey with a Y at the end. And in the very first page of the book, it claims that the name originates from Ramses the Great. And that they're probably related to him in that way. And of course, this is before the genealogy part of this book. This is sort of in this introduction. But I'm like, no. Because guess what his actual ancient Egyptian name was? It's not Ramsey. It's Ramasu. Yes, it may have derived off of this thing, but it's just they say these things with no trace of evidence, and it's very common. My other favorite one is that there are people who will say that they are direct descendants of Tutankhamun. And I'm like, you mean notably one of the only ancient Egyptian kings who notably never had a living child and caused a massive succession crisis. You're a direct descendant of him? I don't think
just
people
like
know
George Washington. I'm a direct descendant from George Washington.
I don't think people know what direct descendant means.
Yeah. George Washington never had any biological children either. He adopted Martha's children from her first marriage.
Yes. you can say in your own way you are a descendant of George Washington. You cannot say you are a direct descendant. My favorite thing when I started working at the DAR, a lot of my friends were very curious and did not know anything about this organization. And so a lot of my one friend would always give me these what if scenarios. And she goes, what if this person had this child out of an affair? Da, 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 da. She always started with George Washington, and I always cut her off every single time. And I said, you can't pick another person, pick Jefferson, pick somebody else. You can't start with George Washington in any sense of the word. And she goes, but I'm like, no, you cannot start with George Washington, because if you're actually going to start with George Washington, if somebody actually tried to apply to the DAR and said that they were a direct descendant of George Washington, there better be a whole big fat packet of all of that evidence that you have, because you can't do that,
including affidavits and everything else.
Yeah, tons and tons of stuff. And so here's the thing is, like, yes, are there people out there in the world today that are probably a descendant of Ramses II who had over 100 children? Absolutely there are. Do we have that direct genealogical line like we do have for Confucius? No. So I need proof without you just saying it. But don't say tut. Like, don't say tut. Don't say, there's a couple people out there, don't say those people. That doesn't make sense. I always like to say Cleopatra VII, there are technically could be descendants of Cleopatra II because one out of her 4 children more than likely survived. Was married and could have had children. We don't know if she had children, but there is a possibility that somebody could be related to Cleopatra VII. It's a rare one. It's not very well documented, but there is also the Westerners have, as you mentioned, latched onto Egyptian motifs in their own funerary monuments a lot. And a lot of the things that Westerners have attached are not ancient Egyptian funerary monuments. An obelisk is not a funerary monument. It is it's just like a show of power for one. But it's thought to be like the sun's rays. It's typically attributed to the sun god Ra and kind of the power of the sun. Ra has nothing to do with the afterlife. So like obelisks have nothing to do with it. Pyramids do have to do with the afterlife. It makes sense when somebody puts a pyramid on top of their tombstone or on top of their mausoleum. But one of the big things with American Westerners specifically is that the Egyptian revival is an architecture trend, and also decorative arts like on chairs and jewelry and all of this stuff when Egypt becomes very popular and wants those motifs thrown around. This is coming about starting in 1799 when Napoleon invades Egypt and sort of opens it up to the Western world, and then really starts kicking off 1840s, 1850s, 1860s, and then going into the 1900s, and then gets a huge big resurgence when Tutankhamun is discovered in the 1920s. But in the Reconstruction era, so post-Civil War, Americans were sort of realizing that they don't have a culture. They've reached this point where some of their generations who remember like the Revolution and these other places that they came from, they're not remembering. They're not there. That is not in their like living memory. And so they are sort of, it sounds weird to say that like the government and larger groups sort of were trying to create a culture, but it is sort of what was happening at that time. And the best thing that they essentially came up with is that they could take what they wanted from all of these cultures that they descended from. And that is why you go around Washington, D.C., you go see government buildings all across the United States. They got those Greek and those Roman columns. And when you go to cemeteries, older cemeteries, they have Egyptian motifs because Egyptians are always associated with mortuary, with any sort of funerary practice. So you do see the obelisks, you see the pyramids, you see the cornice and the lotiform or papyriform columns in like the gate of the cemetery. They are picking and choosing what they wanted about these ancient cultures to sort of create an American quote unquote culture. And so Egypt falls into those cemeteries and tombstones, which is very weird thing to think about, but it is sort of where all that all comes from. It's why the Washington Monument is an obelisk, even though even though I've grown up near DC my entire life, I've never seen it as an obelisk because it's made out of bricks and not a solid piece of stone. But it is. Obviously, it's an obelisk, and that is directly because of the ancient Egyptians. Wombat, quick answer. Canopic jars are not for cremation ashes. Canopic jars are for the organs of the deceased person. The ancient Egyptians would never cremate bodies because that is destroying one part of the ancient Egyptian soul that we talked about earlier. The body is a part of that soul, and you would not be able to go to the afterlife. Only Greeks, the first people to kind of really do that as Greeks and Romans were cremated, but not. Hey, Dapper. Welcome our fellow genealogist into the chat.
Welcome.
We're going back and forth answering questions about genealogy and funerary practices in the ancient and modern world with Allison, Crazy Cemetery Lady. So I'm skipping over one of these questions because I answered it was if you researched the genealogy of the person before or after you clean the tombstone, and you definitely said after. That I love the thing that you're like, I have no idea who I'm cleaning, because you're right. Some tombstones are so dirty that you can't tell.
A lot of them are. Yeah, I'm just like, well, I mean, and I've had people say, well, what if they were murderers?
We're going to get a hell of a video out of that.
Yep. Well, we'll find out later, won't we?
We'll find out later. I guess I'll ask, have there ever been a time where you do clean a tombstone and you decide not to, after you do the research, you decide not to make a video because of something that comes up in the research?
Usually I can find a way to tell the story so that it's still respectful. Like there's been a couple, like one thing we do on Thursdays, the group, we pull a random Find a Grave. So we go on this Find a Grave website, which has all the cemeteries, and
I love Find a Grave.
You just, and you go in the memorial ID and you just, mash a bunch of numbers, and whoever comes up, and then you do some research. So it's like free research. So you do some research on them, and then on the live on Thursdays we talk about them. And there was one, and it was I didn't use it because it was a young girl that and it was a while ago, but decided to end her own life. And I'm like, no, I'm not telling that story. But I've cleaned stagecoach robbers' families. I did clean a younger woman. She was like 32, and she took her own life. And I was able to tell her story, and really get to where she was. So for the most part, like I said, I don't think that there's been technical difficulties. I couldn't use the video, but for the story itself, I actually don't think I've come across one I didn't do.
I like that. Everyone's story.
They should all get their stories told.
It's also one of my favorite TikToks that is just completely random, and I kind of stumbled upon, and I always forget the name of it, but I think it's a historical society out in California, and they just post mugshots of people like from like the gold rush, and they are like, what crime do you think this person did? And it's like the most random, absolutely random, and like sometimes they go deeper in the genealogy, but most of the time they don't, and I'm just always like, what type of crime could this be? And some of them are very sad. They're like a little kid, and it's just like they stole bread because they were hungry, and it's just like, it's very simple, very stuff, but like very good New York redneck. It's history. We can't change it. It is. People can learn things from all different types of stories over time, and so it's really you have to talk about all of them at the same time. You can't really siphon certain things out as much as you can. If you want to ask one of your other questions to me.
If you had to pick 3 visual elements that scream eternity or protection in Egyptian funerary design, what are they and why?
I love this question because it's going to tie very well into the next question I have to ask you about. So there are some really obvious answers to this. There's the Ankh. Where's my Ankh? The Ankh. It is the symbol of life. So it can be seen as a protection. It can be seen as like everlasting sort of life. And it is frequently seen where the god is like holding it and they're putting it up to like the lips of the deceased king or the deceased person, and it is giving them life even in the afterlife. And so I think that is sort of the afterlife in it itself is just, that is eternity. So that is something that like you are continuously always going to be giving life, which is why I think it's a really important symbol. The other thing is that they just generally just use this in decoration, on like buildings and on furniture and jewelry. Like this sign is just, they will tuck this sign in wherever they can. And it is a physical hieroglyph. It is used for the word for life, and it's used for a countless amount of other words, including the word for sandal, which is why some people think that this symbol actually depicts a sandal in which your ankle goes through here and this part goes around the side of your foot, and then this goes in between your two toes. It's not fully confirmed. I just did a video lately about all of the different theories on it, and everyone's arguing in the comments. Like, it's just crazy. The one thing that I will say that this is completely sidetracking, because this annoyed me so much. So many people say this is the key to life. Like, they use specifically the word key.
Oh, okay.
Ancient Egyptians didn't have keys. I don't know how clear. Yeah. Like, that's just obvious to me. I don't know why that's not obvious to other people. They did have some locking mechanisms on doors. I cannot figure out when they date to, but from what it appears, the key is a piece of wood. Like, it's like a wedge, sort of. It's not a key, like locking the key. There is no such thing as keys. So I will fight to the tooth and nail that it is life. It is not the key to life. Because if you're talking about a physical key, they did not have those.
Right.
Which I think is a silly thing.
Till like the 1200s.
God, I don't even. Yeah, that is a great, like a very good question. I have no idea when like actual locking key mechanisms.
Tasha, let us know in the comments when was the key invented, first use.
Yeah, yeah. It's like it's you could look it up. An ancient Egyptian like locking mechanism. It involves some sort of wedge that you would just sort of put in. They do have like. They just don't have keys. I just like, it's so funny that people are like so adamant. It's like, it's the key of life. I'm like, no. Because even the expression key of life, which like, yes, doesn't mean unlocking something. They didn't have a word for key because they didn't have a key. I don't know how to explain it anymore.
You can't have a word for something you don't have a concept of.
Yeah. Uni Booney on TikTok's like, I saw a video in Maya's tomb saying that the Ankh was the key to the false door. The false door is not even a door. That's the whole point. The false door is like, I can understand that. They're giving the key. No, it's not the same thing. But that is funny to think about. Yeah, because false doors are literally false doors. The next one I would say is an Eye of Horus. It's definitely on more of that protection side. It's not necessarily on the eternity side. I used to wear one as a necklace to protect me kind of when I was in college, and so it's very much used as a symbol of protection for the deceased, and it gets featured in a lot of different ways. And one of my favorite ones, which I think is something that people are not going to think of because it's not really seen as a symbol, but it is. There's this god called He. He's got this very annoying name that is very stupid for me to pronounce, but there's this god named He. H-E-H. That's all I say. It's just two H's next to each other, and they just put the E in there for phonetics because you can't say two consonants next to each other. But He is part of a large group of gods. He's part of the Aeneid. So there's the Ogdoad, which is the 8, and the Aeneid, which is... Wait, no, the Aeneid is also the 8. I always forget. Whatever. There's two like large kind of creation gods, and He and his wife Hawhet, which is even more annoying to say, they represent eternity. And so like literally his name means eternity, and he is also a little hieroglyph of him where he sort of has his arms like this. That hieroglyph means million. And the ancient Egyptians had that concept of million. They had a lot of mathematical stuff, so they knew what a million was, but they used the word for million to mean eternity, to mean infinite, because it was obviously such a large number that they couldn't really think of. And so when they talk about people living forever in the afterlife, they talk about millions and millions of years. That is like always the phrase that is used. And a mortuary temple for a pharaoh is called the House of a Million and Million Years. And so even just this little image of a god, he's like kind of kneeling and he's kind of has his hands like this, that is eternity for them. That is like, a million is just so big. And so I think that's an underrated one. People won't typically think of that, but like, he literally is this god of infinity. And his name meant flood, because they believed that the beginning of the world, everything was water. And so again, infinite. It was just infinite water. And then the primordial mound, the beginning of the earth, kind of started with that. That's an underrated one. I don't think people mostly think about that one. But this ties in very...
wonder where those stories came from, though. Like, it passed down, and the water was infinite. But if you think about it, when, the continents were shifting, and so, like, that really could have been to a point. I mean, obviously not all the way back, but, things were shifted. The water was infinite for the ocean.
Yeah, it was for a while, which is it's so fascinating to me. And I've talked about this a lot on stream, because so many ancient cultures have a flood myth, except the ancient Egyptians, because they weren't scared of the flood, because the flood came every year, and if they didn't get a flood, they would die. And
right. Then they were worried.
And so it's like my favorite thing that is so simple. Like, it's just so logical that I think everyone kind of thinks a lot of ancient cultures are like these high and mighty and all symbols and religion and stuff like that. And some things are just logical and simple. But I think very much tied into it, I wanted to ask you, what were some like really unique funerary monuments that you sort of have seen in your work, and maybe even kind of similar to your question to me, like small motifs that just keep coming up all the time. Whenever you see this thing, you're like, oh, that's because of this. That's because of some sort of belief in tombstones, or why they had to put those on there. And like, what are some really like unique things that we probably, like, most of the time, I think people just think a tombstone is pretty simple. They've gotten more elaborate, I think, over the years. Like, I've seen those ones that are like books and stuff, but like, what are some, when you're looking historically, some unique monuments that you've seen?
So, I mean, going back, they obviously had, if you go back to the UK, you were looking at memento moris. So that was the skull and crossbones, usually with an hourglass, and wings. So that was literally to say, and it's a somewhat famous quote on a nobody's grave, is, "As you are today, so was I. As I am today, so will you be."
Oh, spooky.
It's it's literally a fact of life. You are going to die. Yeah. Period. Like, they haven't figured out how to stop that yet. So it's a fact of life, and the memento mori was put on there to remind people of, because back in the 1600s, like, death was a part of life. Prior to 1850, even in the United States, 1850, the statistics were that a child born had a 50, like literally a half and half chance of making it to the age of 5.
Yeah.
So like it was part of life, and I'm so glad that it is not anymore. Yes. That we have all the advances and stuff, but they dealt with it in a whole different headspace. And if you go back to medieval Europe and the 1300s, 1400s, 1500s, the most pressing, the absolutely most nerve-wracking thing that you, me, the king, the pope, the Vestal Virgins, all the things, the number one thing that they thought about is am I going to go to heaven? Or the afterlife of reward, whatever they wanted to call it. And like that was it. So that's what made, the churches so powerful, because they would tell you, well, if you don't do this 5 Hail Marys and you don't give me 10% of your money, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
Straight up, you're going to hell. You didn't do for the church like you're supposed to, so you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to heaven. So like, what would happen to me after I die? That was the number one thing.
Yeah.
So they play that out in headstones, and it did get more elaborate. So you had the 1600 stones that are still kind of there, because
Yeah.
they're very
Yeah.
mossy, and they won't let us clean them.
Mm-hmm.
That have simple things like letters, initials, and then sometimes, like if he was a baker, there would be a rolling pin,
Mm-hmm.
with dates. And then it got more elaborate with full names, and then you had, there's a whole symbolism
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a language in the cemetery, because you have things like, denotes the lamb that I talked
Yeah.
about before. If you see a lamb, not always, but more than likely, it's going to be a child or a baby, an infant,
Mm-hmm.
born sleeping, sometimes they say. You also have things like columns, pillars, or even
Mm.
sometimes partial obelisks that are short. They're
Yeah.
angled and it looks like it's broken. And it actually
Oh.
means a life cut short.
Yeah.
You see hands pointing up, going up
I
to
know. Yeah.
heaven.
The hands.
You see, there's a difference when you see flowers. So if you see roses on there, what is the rose doing? Is it in full bloom? Is it a
Mm.
rose bud? Is it like a closed rose? So if you have a small rose that's not quite yet open, it means that they were young. So they
Mm.
weren't in the bloom of life. So if you have a rose that has a beautiful bloom, it means that they lived longer.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just like so many symbols that are on headstones that you can just, yeah, we actually did a course on Grave Geeks on things to
Ooh.
see, and it talks about them.
Cool.
I think it's $5. We did not, like, literally all our
Yeah.
courses on there. I think the most so far we have is $10. Ooh.
Ooh. Yeah.
Um, just nominal things, but it's its
Mm-hmm.
whole language. Just looking at the different things on headstones in the shape of them.
Yeah. I remember that course that I took. They talked about headstone shapes and stuff, and I've learned a little bit about that there also are, in a way, you can actually find like specific artists and people who made like one type of, I know the very popular one, you're probably going to know the name of it because I'm pretty sure it's a northeastern person, but it's the face in the center with the two wings out,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that is like an extremely popular style and kind of stems from like one group or one person, and you start to see
From the
them.
UK.
Yeah, from the,
It
yeah,
started in
exactly.
the UK. Yep.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so there are a lot of things like that, and I think it's funny when you see similarities with ancient Egyptian tombs, and it has to do, like, style of tombs changes over time. Obviously you get pyramids and then you get lower tombs, and funerary practices and funerary monuments for so long have been a very big part of a person's life. People have asked me, like, aren't the ancient Egyptians obsessed with death? And I'm like, I don't think they're really obsessed with death. They're just very conscious of death and of what they want to do in the afterlife, which I would say is no different than what you said. All of the people who are fighting plague and all of that stuff, like, people just know that death is kind of coming. And I feel like this is something that has sort of faded over time as life expectancies have kind of increased and medicine has increased. And God, like, when do people start buying their cemetery plot? Like, I don't know. Like, I bet there's a way you can figure out the average age. Do you know the average age of a person who...
I don't know, but I have mine bought.
Okay, yeah. And so I have no idea. Um, Ancient Egyptians, especially pharaohs, you start building your tomb whenever, like, if you're a pharaoh, when you become the pharaoh, if you're, like, you start building your tomb when you're young. Like, truly.
Yeah.
And it was just something that was at that point a standard to do, and you hire the guy who just did your friend's tomb next to you. And like I mentioned, the governors in Beni Hassan, they're some of my favorite tombs from the Middle Kingdom because they repeat, like, literally the exact same scene. It's this big, all of these registers of all these guys wrestling each other, and then there's a fortress being attacked, and there's a little guy and a dog next to it. That exact same scene is found in another tomb, and then a shortened version is found in another tomb, and they're all next to each other. And so you're just like, well, some guy hired John and he just did all the tombs, even if the time difference like changes. And you get these, I didn't even realize until I went to Egypt. Like, I know a little bit about the Valley of the King's tombs, a little bit. Like, I know more about Tutankhamun's. Almost all of the pharaohs from the New Kingdom have the exact same tomb layout, both in shape and design. And I went to 11 tombs in one day, which is more than the average tourist. And I was like getting bored. I was like, why is there a sun disk and this guy in front in the same exact spot on the left side of the tomb as soon as you walk in? It's the same thing. And I was so shocked. I did not realize that they were that uniform over time. Mm-hmm. But you get this. And I think, like, I liked what Wombat said, is like, people are now trying lots of different types of funerary practices. There's the ones where you can decompose naturally. There's the ones where you can be turned into a tree. People use cremated ash to make jewelry and to make big chunks of resin that look like the ocean. And it is so much expanded, but people are not thinking about it until way later than it has historically. Because I have no idea. I don't think my parents have a cemetery plot.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. I mean, ancient Egyptians didn't see death as an end.
No,
they saw it as a continuation of life. So it was just like, oh man, that sucks. You know, Jane died, but now she's going to the next step.
Hey, she's in the next part. Yeah, exactly. And the other fun thing that I know that, like, obviously people who do believe in heaven, they do believe that that is a next step. But the thing with the ancient Egyptians, they don't really have a hell, which is so fascinating to me. They have the concept of, which everyone has probably seen, the weighing of the heart. That is not a concept that is in the entirety of ancient Egypt. It's kind of middle to the end of ancient Egyptian history. But you have the weighing of the heart, where you have to weigh your heart against Ma'at, which is order. It's the feather of Ma'at, and against the order of kind of the way the world works. And if your heart is heavier than Ma'at, then your heart gets eaten by a goddess named Amet, who is this scary creature that's half crocodile, half lion, half hippo. She's really cool. The funny thing about it is, they don't really explain what happens after that. Your heart's been eaten. That's a part of your soul. That's an important part. Essentially, they just say you don't get to the field of reeds. But they don't describe it like a lot of more Christian religions describe purgatory and describe hell.
Yeah.
They don't really have anything like that. And I think in one aspect of this is because they were kind of confident that they were all going to get through. And the other aspect of this is that not everyone in Egypt could mummify, could do the things that they sort of decided were necessary to get to the afterlife. The poorest of people in Egypt are not able to be mummified. They are getting a pit burial. They might get 4 offerings. They might even get 1. It's just a piece of pottery. That's all it is. This is something that is not talked about a lot, I think, in ancient Egyptian research. I have like sort of one article about personal piety that I've been reading, and it unfortunately is one of the thickest articles I've ever read, so it takes me forever to like figure out what he's talking about. There's a very high chance that the lowest populations and the poorest populations in ancient Egypt did not believe in ancient Egyptian religion and were much more secular than we think they are. And to be honest, it is a kinder thing for us to assume that they were secular, because the other option is that they were super religious and yet they could not afford to mummify their body, and thus they will never get the chance to go to the field of reeds. And that is a really depressing lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like, think of the poorest person in medieval Europe. If they are a very religious person and they can go to church, which, yes, you do have to, like, obviously pay penance and pay that, you can still go to church for free. Like, you can still walk in there and you can listen and you can pray and you can do these things that aren't going to afford you a little bit. But yeah, you're probably not going to get the best burial, but it's all about the chance that you have to get to heaven. It doesn't have anything really to do with your burial in a lot of cases.
Right.
But for the Egyptians, it does. If your body is not mummified and like preserved, your Ba will never be able to find your body again. And that just doesn't make sense for the entirety of a population to be so depressed that they are never going to get there.
That's literally like, it doesn't matter what you do because of your class, you're gonna go to hell.
You're gonna go to
so
hell.
Like that, it must not have been like,
no.
In my mind, I mean, I am not an Egyptian scholar, so
Yes.
but in my mind, that would create so much chaos, because then your actions don't matter, and then they could do whatever they wanted to because they were gonna go, like, not make it to heaven anyways.
Yeah.
So they must have been secular. They must have had a different
viewpoint at the least.
Yeah.
And the big thing that sort of has been determined is that depending on where you're living, different gods are patrons to different cities. You're not traveling. You're not going to see the big temple of Amun in the capital. You are, like, people are staying where they are, unless they're in the military, unless they're rich, or unless they are literally a trader. Like, they are staying where they are. They are stuck sort of in that mindset. And so they might not feel like they are even being influenced by the big temple of Amun. They might not feel any of the effects that happens. So one thing that we know that is consistent with the lowest of classes is that they are worshiping a very select group of gods and goddesses, which we classify as household gods and goddesses. Some of these become really big. Hathor is a really big goddess. She's the goddess of childbirth and motherhood and music. And she is a very big goddess. But a lot of these other ones are very small. There's Taweret, another goddess of childbirth, motherhood, protection in the household. There's Bes, who is like, he is a big protection goddess. All of these household goddesses are about protecting the house and protecting children and childbirth. A lot of these things are that. And so those are the people that they are worshiping. And they're not worshiping in them in the same sense of donating stuff to the Temple of Amun and donating all your money and doing stuff. They are just having small shrines. They're giving what they can. And so I think that they are not going to be fully secular. That is for sure. But it's much more individual. And they have to sort of have this belief that, yeah, something's going to happen. And you also have to remember, about the highest estimate of literacy in ancient Egypt is 5% of the population. And most of the time it's 1 to 5%. The highest is 5. They can't read anything on these temple walls. They are taking the images in, and they are learning through oral history and oral tradition. There's no point of them having a Book of the Dead. They're not going to know what it says. And so there has to be some sort of separation, because that is just a very sad lifestyle to live. And I love the idea of, yeah, it's chaotic. They would rise up. Like, why don't I deserve to go to the afterlife?
Right. There's no checks and balances. I mean, even though, we'll just use the United States as an example, even though we're not a religious-based country,
yeah,
the checks and balances are still there. You go to jail, to prison if you do bad things. Yeah. It's the same premise. Yeah. Because their lives were so much shorter. So it's like, if you do bad things, you're going to hell, you're going to burn there forever, versus going to heaven if you do good things. So if they had no chance in Egyptian society, the way their belief system was, to make it to heaven,
yeah, it just doesn't. There's no balance. Absolutely. No. And so it's one of those interesting things that just, like, I think about all the time, because one of the things with Egypt is that people will generalize it to hell today. It's 5,000 years of history. You cannot generalize it, but that is just how it is taught in schools. You only get a week to teach 5,000 years of history. So you get those surface level, you get that generalization. And I want people to really think of Egypt and a lot of their funerary practices with a lot of nuance, because it does not apply to everybody, and it can't. No. It doesn't make any sense to. If you can't afford to do it, why would you even try? Why would you even live? And so there has to be some sort of separation that, like, they would understand, oh, hey, it's the holiday for that big god over there. We get the day off, or we get more rations, we get more food. So
Yeah.
Sure, I'll do something nice for him. But it is also a really great example as to why tombs were looted. And why tombs were looted in antiquity very shortly after, because their only two options is that they were either cocky enough that they were like, I don't care. Maybe I will risk the wrath of the gods and all that stuff, or they just don't even believe in it at all. And they're just like, I need money. I need to bring back these things into my economy. And priests did it too. There's a heavy indication that a lot of priests would do this as well. And it has nothing really...
Well, they knew where the tombs were, so I mean...
Exactly! The people who robbed the tombs are the people who built the tombs, and the priests who buried the people in the tombs. That is like the most obvious, like they figured out how everything worked.
But ask us in 1920 and no!
No, absolutely not. Why would I do that? All right. I think we are wrapping up. Does anyone have any questions for Allison, or do you have any more questions for me? I think we have most of the stuff covered.
And it's sad too, because honestly, some of the wildest and interesting stories have been from the nobodies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, can you imagine some of the stories of just the everyday Egyptian back then? I mean, look at the receipt, one of the first written complaints ever was, about the was it a copper?
It's
or
copper,
something?
yeah. It's a Mesopotamian guy really mad about his high quality copper.
Copper.
There are so many letters in the Amarna letters that are all technically they are kings writing back and forth, but they are like complaining about the pettiest things. He said, you said you were gonna send me these 2 things of gold and you sent me 1. What's wrong with you? But yeah, that you do get, it just makes me sad that there are so many stories in the entirety of the history that are just going to be lost to time. But the best we can do is try to document them and try to tell their stories.
Fanciest cemetery I've ever been to. I know that there's some fantastic out in California, like not mausoleums, I can never say this word.
Oh, columbariums.
Thank you.
Yes.
I can't. I don't know why. They have some amazing ones. But I've been to Highgate in the UK.
I've been wanting to go to Highgate.
Outside of London. It's beautiful but scary. Like, there's so much that needs to be done. Like, there was one where I could have slid right in with them. Like, they had a tombstone, a tablet.
Yeah.
My words at this point. It's a cross, but it's like it was all worn away, and I could have just slid right down. But honestly, some of the coolest ones are like 40 stones off a side road.
Yeah. I don't know. I know I've been to one in Savannah, Georgia, which was an old one, and I will say yeah, I think that's probably what the one was. And then I'm very happy to say that, like, all 4 of my grandparents are buried in Arlington National Cemetery, which is a very, very iconic cemetery. And both of they are in the columbariums because at this point they are running out of room. So only the highest ranking military and people who have died in combat can get actual of the iconic white tombstones. But it is having to go to 3 funerals there because my one pair of my grandparents had the double funeral. It is a fascinating I don't know, ritual is probably the best way to put it on how it all works, and how many they have a day, which is also like, it's very short. It's very short because they are trying to fit so many people in a day that want to be buried there. But I've been wanting to go to Highgate because I'm pretty sure Highgate has an Egyptian gate somewhere.
They have a whole section.
Yeah, it's a whole
So
section.
it's
Yeah.
Egyptian Alley, and you actually go through. There's two obelisks on the outside, and it's covered in vines.
Oh yes. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen pictures of it.
and then it's inside. You're in this like tunnel, and the top of the tunnel is trees,
Oh,
and it actually makes the arch.
that's actually amazing.
I did do a video on it, but it's a while back.
I might
You'd
have
have
to
to
go find
scroll down.
it.
And then and then it's a circle on the inside
Yes.
and on the outside. They have pretty much mausoleums where there's up to like 22 people in each one.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I've been wanting to go to that one. And then what was the other one? I know. So, Dapper Historian, who's in the chat earlier, we did a lecture with him, I think 2 years ago. And he did a whole really, really great lecture on cemeteries. And oh, that's what I was going to say. I've been to the Habsburg Crypt, in Austria. That is a weird place because it's just under a church, and it's all, I can't even call them mausoleums because they're essentially these giant metal coffins on feet. Like
Ossuaries.
an ossuary. Thank you. Yeah, it is. It was extremely daunting. I was 13, and I couldn't read German, so I couldn't, and there was no English translations anywhere. And all of these ossuaries they're big, they're metal, and they're just decorated with fake skulls all over it. And it is gnarly. And eventually, it's kind of cool because you do start in like the oldest part, and eventually you get to Franz Ferdinand, and it's like, oh, everything's a little bit, or not.
Wait, was it just one person? Because if it was just one person, it's not an ossuary.
So I can't remember so there are multiple of them. I cannot remember if multiple people were buried inside of them, but the best way I can describe it is it's just like, it's this metal box, and it's bigger than, like, it's wider than the length of a coffin. It's like as long as a coffin, but it's like double, if not triple the size of it. And they're just raised up on these four little legs, and there's several of them. There's so many. Because it's in this huge, huge crypt system. And then eventually you get to like a normal coffin, and you're like, oh, that's Franz Ferdinand. But it is a daunting place because it's cold and it's underneath this tiny, tiny church. Like, you would never know it's there. Like, I think people pass by it all the time, and it's like a very small fee to go and see it inside. But yeah, that is definitely, it's not a cemetery, but it's not a cemetery.
Because what they would used to do, especially in the UK, the churchyard would get full. And what they would do is they would dig everybody up, and they would put all their bones in an ossuary. So that is a box, and they'd put them all in there, and then they could rebury the yard or replant the yard.
Rebury the yard. So I just pulled up its Wikipedia because now I'm curious. They literally just called sarcophagi. So I don't think they are technically ossuaries.
No, doesn't sound it.
But yeah,
that's a lot in the UK. That's what they look like. They're little feet. They're boxes, and they have a lid, and they just throw all the bones in there. Yeah,
this like most common material for a sarcophagus was bronze-like alloy of tin coated with shellac, and they're like Baroque and Rococo, and yeah, they are. Oh my god, the list is so long. Yeah. Look it up, people. It's crazy. It's very weird. Oh my god, yeah, there's one of them. Oh, it's so weird. But yeah, they are calling them sarcophagi, which I think is very funny.
Yeah, the Paris catacombs.
Yeah, I did not go to the Paris catacombs. I'm too freaked out to go in there. And that is potentially more because I don't like caves, and that is essentially a cave. That's a good question. Is there a
opposite? Opposite. You got them switched. So a cemetery is not connected. A graveyard is connected to a church. And then in Scotland, a graveyard is called a kirkyard because it's connected to the kirk.
The kirkyard. Oh, interesting. That is very fascinating. All right. Any last questions for Crazy Cemetery Lady? I know it's late. I want to not take up all your time, but we had such a great talk. This is I love this because I love doing the dual things because people think that like, oh, what's the point? Why would you talk about ancient Egyptian genealogy and modern genealogy? It's because it's so similar. Like these all things are connected. These all are similar. Like we can talk about these things absolutely without like through time, through 5,000 years and such. But yeah, if there's no more questions, we will thank Crazy Cemetery Lady Allison for coming on. The whole thing. The whole thing will be on YouTube maybe next week. We'll see what happens. But we're gonna shout out Crazy Cemetery Lady one more time. We're trying to convince her to do Twitch, so everyone should follow her so that she can already make like affiliate and so she can make money with streaming and stuff. And
I mean, would people want to watch me do my genealogy research while I'm checking the headstones I cleaned?
I would absolutely love that. So that is just something. But you would also check her out on YouTube, Crazy Cemetery Lady, and also TikTok. Mainly, those are her two main ones. But no, you would be surprised. People like history, and I think people would absolutely like that. And yes, that is true. There is actually a studying / co-working category. So like some of those people don't even talk the entire time. They're just researching and stuff.
Oh yeah, I talk to myself, so I can't do that.
I also
what the hell is this record doing here?
Very hysterically. Sometimes I'll sit here when I'm just staring at my computer and there will just be a moment where my eyes will just like adjust and I realize I'm just talking to myself in my room. I know I'm talking to people in the chat, but I'm just talking to people. I'm just talking about myself in a room. So absolutely. So thank you so much. Thanks for dealing with technical difficulties, but we figured it out. It'll all work out pretty well.
Thanks for helping me figure it out because I'm a noob when it comes to Twitch. I'm like, what am I supposed to click? Wait, what? And then I had to get my 16-year-old to set it up.
I will absolutely tutor anybody who wants to actually go on Twitch. Absolutely, I will give you all the advice. So thank you so much, guys. We will stick around for a little bit and chat, and then we will go and find somebody to go raid.
I'm going to bed, so
yeah, you go to bed. Yeah, absolutely. I don't have work tomorrow, so I don't have to go to bed, but I am EP.
I always say at 10 o'clock I turn into a pumpkin, so.
You
guys have fun. Thank you.
Have a great rest of your night. Bye.
You too.